Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today at the May Symposium 2024 on Digital Health Evidence Review. We appreciate you all joining us today. My name is Stan Kichnowski. I chair the Healthcare Innovation and Technology Lab, one of the world's leading digital health labs for testing and teaching about digital health and digital health technologies in healthcare and life sciences. We have a packed schedule today. As you all know, we have seen a tremendous amount of acceleration of digital health in a few different areas, including telemedicine and some of the direct-to-manufacturer, direct-to-patient websites that we've seen pop up over the last few months, particularly with Pfizer and earlier this year, Lilly Direct. We're going to be looking at where these accelerations of digital health adoption have occurred and then reviewing some of the evidence around them. And we'll be starting with a phenomenal interview with Laurent Van Leberg and Amy West. Amy runs the digital transformation efforts out of Novo Nordisk and has been a multi-decade veteran of digital health and digital technologies in the US and around the world. And we're going to start there and looking forward to this interview and many more interviews, keynotes, presentations, and panels today. And hopefully, as our audience, you will have an opportunity to be involved. Please do feel free to link in with me at Stan Kichnowski. You can just find me on LinkedIn. That's where I check most of my messages. Or you can use the Q&A function as well in the Zoom meeting here. And looking forward to seeing that. For those of you that are traveling, you can also watch us on YouTube, where it is streaming live as well. And with that, we'll hand over the virtual podium and panel to Laurent and to Amy. Laurent.
Yes, good morning, Stan, and then good morning, good afternoon, good day to everybody. Welcome, Amy, to this interview. I'm very happy we are together, actually, being both in this Breakthrough Alliance board.
It's nice to see you again as well, and excited to kick off the symposium today.
Yeah, that's really great, and actually, for me, it's also very interesting to hear from you, Amy. We're going to talk about women's health. It's a key topic. We need to make a lot of progress, but let's hear from you. Actually, what do you see on women's health? Being actually the key challenges that we need to address.
Well, I think in women's health, it's obviously been an area that has been underserved for a variety of reasons. It wasn't until the late 90s that women were even included in clinical trials. And so a lot of the healthcare innovation that we've seen has been based on the male biology. And so that's obviously a huge challenge just to start with. And because of that, I think obviously men and women are different biologies, and a lot of the things that impact women go underserved. And I think when you think about women's health, it's very broad. It covers a vast area from cradle to grave. I think some of the categories that we're most often familiar hearing about are things like menstruation care, fertility tracking and solutions, and pregnancy care, both pre and postnatal. But it's really much, much broader and wider than that. It's looking at these conditions that disproportionately affect women that are not really getting the attention they deserve. So things like osteoporosis and cervical and breast cancers, autoimmune conditions, stroke, thyroid disease and thyroid issues, and mental health challenges, anxiety, the list goes on. And I think that there's an opportunity here to really focus more on that. It's a huge area of opportunity when we think about the fact that I believe over the next 5 years, it's considered to be over $58 billion industry. So there's a lot of opportunity here to address this unmet need.
And to go a bit deeper on that, Amy, with the advancement of digital tech and also AI, I mean, what do you see are the main advancements maybe in the last recent years, and those that have made maybe most difference or driven most progress on this topic?
Well, again, that's a big question. There are so many examples that we could look at, but just a couple that I think tell a good story. And I think we cannot ignore AI, artificial intelligence. It's everywhere these days, and there's huge opportunity here, especially in the women's health space. There was actually recently an article in the journal Lancet about a really interesting study that's being conducted in China, where they are using an AI tech approach based on non-invasive ultrasound images. It's being used to accurately identify ovarian cancer, and that's a cancer that oftentimes doesn't. It's asymptomatic until it's very advanced. So to be able to use a non-invasive ultrasound image that is supported by AI technology could be a huge way to prevent this very devastating disease that affects a lot of women. And it's also being used to improve the accuracy of breast cancer diagnostics. And at the same time, by leveraging these AI technologies, it's also supporting the radiologists in their workload and their accuracy as well, which is a huge benefit on both sides of the patient as well as the care provider side. I think we see a lot with there's a lot of focus on maternal health for obvious reasons. There's a lot of opportunity for AI in maternal health. Obviously, the first step in preventing newborn deaths is early screening of pregnant women to identify those at risk of developing complications. And in the US, this is widely done throughout routine checkups and scans and things like that. But when we think about the low and middle income countries that don't necessarily have the access that we have in the US, access to diagnostic tools like ultrasound machines and skilled medical technicians is a real challenge. But there are efforts out there to develop and test portable ultrasound machines with diagnostic capabilities that are aided by AI. So you have a lot of efficiency there, and you have a lot of accessibility there that can prevent a lot of the negative health outcomes that we're seeing with maternal health in these low to mid-income level countries. And this is again a great use of AI in women's health specifically. Also looking at things like the modalities and the methodologies to deliver healthcare through the supportive technology. When we think about contraception, frequently it's often a pill type of tool or a modality, but research also shows that nearly 40% of women in low and middle income countries who use family planning solutions stop within the first year because it's just not accessible to them. So, the methods that we have do not meet their needs or are too complex. We just don't have the access. So leveraging technology, new methods are coming out, like an invisible skin patch that can be used and worn in a very discreet way and can be used very easily. These are providing new opportunities for women in some of these areas that might not have had the access or the ability to use these types of contraceptives that are important for their families and their lives. These are just a few examples. There are many.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Amy. And maybe I'll take the question from the opposite angle. And are there some areas that you see are maybe less addressed, and where, in a way, you'd like to send a bit of a call for action to entrepreneurs and people here on the call?
Yeah, sure. Because I think it's an important point. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, when you think about women's health, there's a lot of focus and investment in the fertility space, in the pre and postnatal care space, and that's great. That's really important. But I think when you think about the full life, the cradle to grave aspect of women, there can be more done in these later mid to later stage life areas, like in the osteoporosis area, like in the autoimmune disease area, like in the mental health as things are changing in a woman's body and in their hormones and in their mental health. these are, these later stage of life complications that are also costing the system a lot of money due to, breaking bones and complications due to that, or having to, readmissions for different, autoimmune issues. I mean, I think that there's a huge opportunity to focus in some of these later stage areas of life because they can promote greater quality of life as well as help support reduction in the total cost of care.
Yeah, I think this is really. I mean, it's good to have this specific example. And look, I continue maybe building and using your experience to share with the people here. Obviously, I've been quite deep in the US and also globally. Do you see actually disparities or maybe more difficulties in driving this initiative with like low resource categories in US and maybe globally in some geographies?
I mean, I think there are challenges definitely, obviously, around the world, depending on the situation of the country and the environment and the culture and things like that. But I think that we have a huge opportunity. There are a lot of foundations and grant programs and challenges that are aimed at addressing these women's health disparities globally. One in particular that I'd love to call out here, since we're at the HITLAB May Symposium, is the HITLAB's Women's Health Tech Challenge, that is all about shining a light on women entrepreneurs. They don't even have to be women, but they're focused on women's health. And each year we invite innovators and entrepreneurs and startups to propose their novel concepts to solve the problems of women, again, all over the world. There is, again, huge potential for women's health products and services. I mentioned earlier, it's potentially over a $56 billion industry over the next 5 years. So there's huge value in shining a light on innovators in this space. And last year's Women's Health Tech Initiative and Challenge, we had over 30 countries represented in the application process. So people are thinking about it globally. They're everywhere. And we have 4 different categories for submissions. One is a pre-seed, we have a seed, and a Series A, as well as a nonprofit category, which I think we're one of the few, if not only, challenges to include an actual nonprofit category. So I think that's really differentiating, and I would love people who are listening to get the word out about our upcoming challenge that will be coming out later this fall. And I'd also like to highlight that one of last year's winners, a company called LunaJoy, it's a first of its kind virtual mental health provider that specializes in providing solutions tailored to women's unique mental health needs throughout all different phases of life, from, again, cradle to grave, pregnancy, fertility, menopause. They were one of our winners last year, and they recently just raised $4.2 million in investment. And they can provide support around the world. And again, through, I think, the Women's Health Tech Challenge, we're able to shine a light on companies like LunaJoy and support them getting exposure to these investors and the venture world to get these infusions of much needed funds so they can continue their work.
Yeah, and in a way, that's a goal for everybody here listening. I mean, to apply to this challenge. Obviously, if you're operating in women's health, and share it with your friends who are not here, because I think it's definitely a great opportunity. And Amy, I think we have a couple of minutes for this last question. Partnership. Partnership is obviously a key topic, and here probably partnership with between public, private, and maybe with institution. What are maybe some key learnings from your experience for people here on partnership to look for and partnership to put in place that can really make a difference?
Well, I think it's always important to know it's very difficult to do it alone. You really can't. You need partners, but you've got to have the right ones. And so being clear in your partnership efforts on what your value proposition is, how you can work together to create synergy and in the collaboration process, and make have the 1 + 1 = 3 and not 2. You really want to be thinking about how you can bring those, the different sides of the table together and leverage the skills, the capabilities, or the unique value proposition that the other one has, so you can bring them together to really create the synergy that you're looking for. But I do think that partnership is really critical in this space, whether it's with you're seeing all kinds of partnerships going on with large organizations, partnering with smaller organizations, but making sure the communication is clear, the expectations are clear, because different companies can have different expectations on timing, on deliverables. So it's really important to have these conversations early and create the right milestones so that as you're moving together, you're moving in the right direction that's going to deliver the value that you're looking for.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Amy. That's actually very insightful and also well action oriented for everybody. And actually to everybody listening to us, don't hesitate to connect with Amy on LinkedIn or myself if you want to continue the discussion. And on this, Stan, back to you.
That's fantastic. And again, Amy, thank you for the deep insight there and just really helping our audience understand the insights and perspectives for women's health tech. And thank you, Laurent, for such a great interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are very fortunate to have two tremendous leaders with the ecosystem today with us and providing these insights and these perspectives on digital health and its adoption rates and where it's being adopted, particularly in women's health tech. And one of the things that Amy and Laurent also have in common is that they're both on the board of the Breakthrough Alliance. And so one of the things to understand about the Breakthrough Alliance is it's one of the world's leading organizations when it comes to helping accelerate the optimal adoption of digital technologies in healthcare delivery and life sciences. And it's led by Bill Taranto as the global chair, and Laurent is the European chair. And it has people like Glenys Mera, Michael Peterson, both who are leaders in the technology ecosystem as well, on the board and making sure that the good evidence around technology adoption is being shared with people globally, and that the proper studies that are being implemented at the lab are being done carefully and rigorously and thoughtfully. So thank you both for joining. And if you are interested in the Breakthrough Alliance board, again, just message me on LinkedIn and we'll get you signed up straight away. One of the things we have to talk about today as well is what's happening within the New York City ecosystem and what's happening within life sciences there. And no one knows this better than one of our favorite partners, Monica Maloney from New York City Economic Development Corporation. He's going to talk more about what's happening within New York City as one of the global digital health hubs. And of course, we think it is the digital health hub globally, or obviously as the leader in life sciences between Columbia, Cornell, Mount Sinai, and NYU for the country's top 25 med schools in New York City. Obviously, 8 million people stacked on, all around each other within about 10 square miles, and 22 million people within 50 miles of the Columbus Circle. And then obviously all of the world's top 25 manufacturers located within New York City or within 50 miles of New York City as well. But Monica's here to talk to us more about what's happening in the concrete jungle. Monica.
Thank you, Stan, and thanks to the team at HITLAB for having me back. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to tell this audience about the work of New York City Economic Development Corporation and specifically our initiative to grow the life sciences industry here in New York City, LifeSci NYC. I recognize some people may not be familiar with New York City Economic Development Corporation, or EDC. It's a bit of a mouthful. But we are New York City's economic development agency, which means that we are responsible for making New York City's economy stronger and more diverse. And we do that in part by investing in emerging and innovative industries like the life sciences. And so that's exactly what LifeSci NYC is all about. The other thing I'm going to come back to later is we also manage much of New York City's real estate assets. So that includes, for instance, a lot of the waterfront New York City is owned by the city, and we manage quite a bit of that. So again, I'll come back to why that's important in a little bit. So how do we build an industry like life sciences in New York City? Well, we need 4 key ingredients to do so. We need talent, which New York City really has in abundance. We have the most graduates in biology and the life sciences of any metro in the United States. So one thing where, we're trying to do better is making sure that the talent pipeline into the life sciences industry really reflects the diversity of the population here in New York City. We need innovation. We need great ideas. I think that's another thing, as Stan was mentioning, we have incredible science happening in New York City. We have a lot of incredible innovation here. And where, I think EDC and many others in the ecosystem, including HITLAB, are trying to play a role is making sure that that innovation does not fall into that valley of death and that it actually gets translated into products and companies and gets into the hands of people. We need funding, right? So you have the people to do the work, you have the great idea, and now you need the means actually to bring that forward. So there's a lot that we at EDC do. We do some direct funding, but we also advocate for funding of the life sciences. So for instance, we advocated for reinstating New York City's biotechnology tax credit, which was reinstated. We advocated for the SBIR STTR matching program in New York State, which was just announced and was very popular, and so kind of got maxed out immediately. So those are some things we do around funding. And then finally, you need actually a place to do the work. And this was really the first place that we started as an initiative because we had all these great ideas, people that wanted to start companies coming out of institutions. They really didn't have the laboratory space, the commercial laboratory space to go to. So that's something where EDC has invested a lot and we've seen a lot of success. So just a couple other facts about New York City and why it's so great here. We are #1 for most patents granted. We are #1 for most life sciences degrees granted. We are #1 in NIH funding in the US of any metro area. We have over 100 research foundations, 9 academic medical centers, maybe more depending on how you're counting, 500,000 healthcare workers, 40,000 people skilled in AI. And between our initiative and New York State's Life Science Initiative, over $1.7 billion in government support, local government support for the life sciences industry. And we've also seen a huge increase in the amount of VC funding going to life sciences in New York State over the last several years. So just to say a little bit more about Life Science NYC so that you really understand what this initiative is. This is a mayoral initiative that was started in 2016 with $500 million, and that was doubled to $1 billion in 2021. And we operate at New York City Economic Development Corporation. That's where the initiative lives. And we're supported by 2 incredible advisory bodies. One is the Life Sci NYC Advisory Council. That's made up of some of our industry's leaders, including Clara Pomeroy is one of our co-chairs. She's the president and CEO of the Lasker Foundation. If you don't know Lasker Foundation, they do the Lasker Awards. About half of people that win Lasker Awards win Nobel Prizes. And Harold Varmus is our other co-chair, Nobel Prize winner himself, former NIH director. And then we also have this advisory board that's focused on real estate, given how important that is to our work and, EDC's ability to work in that space. And here is our vision. We want New York City to really emerge as a leader in the life sciences and draw on our strength in science and research, as well as our diversity here in the city. And so how are we doing that? The goals that we're setting for ourselves have to do with unlocking commercial life sciences space, increasing the number of R&D life sciences companies here in New York City, and creating 40,000 jobs. And we're doing great on all of these counts. So we've seen a 3-fold expansion in the amount of commercial life sciences space, almost 4-fold. And we have visibility into about 7 million square feet of space in the next several years. Huge increase in the number of R&D life sciences companies in New York City, and also tremendous growth in employment in the life sciences in New York City since our initiative began. And this map showing the clusters of life sciences spaces in New York City, I think is kind of a testament to what's happened. I think if I showed you the map from 2016, there wouldn't be too many dots on it. But you can see we now have clusters of activity in many different neighborhoods, everywhere from West Harlem, where you have, the ASRC, you have Columbia. So that's, this presence of CUNY and Columbia, has created this incredible sort of innovation. So you've got Harlem Biospace there, and that's, expanding in the fall. You've got these commercial life sciences spaces from Janus. We've got the West Side, some commercial spaces there, Indy Bio Incubator, Hudson Square with Biolabs and J Labs, Long Island City, with InnoLabs. And then you have Kips Bay, which was really the first place that New York City really started to invest in the life sciences with the Alexandria Center for Life Sciences. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Kips Bay because we have this really exciting redevelopment that we're embarking on. It's currently the CUNY Brookdale campus, and it's really being re-envisioned. This entire city block is going to be redeveloped as this incredible educational and scientific campus. There will be a campus for 3 different CUNY colleges for their health and life sciences related programs. There's going to be a high school that's focused on health and life sciences, H&H facilities, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and then up to 1 million square feet of commercial life sciences space on this city block in Kips Bay. And I wanted to make everyone aware that we do have an open procurement right now. We are seeking an anchor tenant for the commercial life sciences tower. And this could be a for-profit or a nonprofit entity, but we're just looking for an entity that wants to do cutting edge life sciences in this space. And there is up to $100 million in city capital support for this tenant. So encourage you to use the QR code there and learn more about this really amazing redevelopment that's happening, and spread the word. So just to kind of, as I start to close out here, I want to share some of the great incentives and programs that are available to companies in emerging tech in New York City and New York State. We have several incubators and accelerators that serve life sciences companies here in New York City. We have an expansion fund for life sciences companies that are looking to grow out of the incubator and get into their own space, and want to do that in New York City. I mentioned that we've reinstated the New York City biotech tax credit. New York State also has an R&D tax credit and the incredible Excelsior Jobs program, which offers a lot of additional credits. Startup New York is an incredible program. I encourage you to look into this. Your employees will not pay state or local income tax if you are part of Startup New York. So it's a really great benefit. Many of the incubators are part of that. I mentioned the SBIR STTR matching program, which is new this year, and we'll re-up next year for new applications. And then we have our incredible life sciences internship program. We also have a cyber internship program. But in this program, we've been running the Life Sci program for 7 years now. It's a really incredible program, very competitive for the students. So, we've had over 3,000 applications for 200 spots this year. We're always looking to increase the number of placements. New York City, we subsidize most of the wages for those interns. They can be undergraduate students, graduate students, even postdocs we have in this program. So really talented group of students. If you're looking for entry-level talent, I really encourage you to look into our internship program. We make it really simple and easy to participate in this. And finally, I'll just say, please go to our website, use our QR code to sign up for our newsletter, reach out if you want to be in touch. We're really here to help you succeed in New York City. So with that, I will just once again thank the whole team at HITLAB.
No, I appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, and this information is spectacular. Again, folks, link in. If you have any questions for her, her LinkedIn is in the chat box. And again, Monica, know how busy you are. Thank you for joining us today. That's wonderful. And we're going from really New York City as a hub for digital health and life science innovation to one of the cornerstones of innovation, which is cybersecurity, especially for digital. And obviously, everyone has read about and heard about what's happened over the last several months between Change Healthcare and United Healthcare and now Ascension. We know that cybersecurity is so important to make sure that we've got a button down and a built up cybersecurity infrastructure. And joining us now from one of the premier healthcare law firms in the world, Epstein Becker Green, is Dennis Sepien Pandagon from Epstein Becker Green, senior counsel there in cybersecurity. And he's going to be talking to us for the next 10 minutes between now and 10:40 about some of the cornerstone elements of a really strong cybersecurity infrastructure. Dennis, thanks for joining us today. Maybe start off by giving everyone a little bit of your background.
Of course, thanks, Dan, and it's a pleasure to be here speaking with you all. I'm a senior counsel here at Epstein Becker Green. Prior to joining the firm, I had served in the U.S. government at the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So there I did a lot of fraud and abuse matters, working with DOJ on civil false claims act cases, as well as working on some regulations related to interoperability in electronic health records. So yeah, it's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Perfect. And when you look at cybersecurity in America today, it's obviously under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of threats on a daily basis. And we know there's foreign actors that are attacking not just healthcare security, but electrical grids and water infrastructure and certainly air traffic control towers, things like that. It's getting really bizarre here. But when you think about it on the healthcare side, what are like some of the biggest cybersecurity threats that you've seen?
Sure. Well, I mean, let's look at the numbers, who's targeted and how it's happening, right? So cybersecurity breaches of the American healthcare system, it's increased in recent years, obviously. The University of Minnesota did a study last year that ransomware attacks more than doubled in the 5 years between 2016 and 2021. Last year alone, HHS's Office of Civil Rights reported or showed that there were over 540 reported healthcare data breaches, potentially affecting almost 122 million individuals and compromising their protected health information. Those numbers were a record for healthcare data breaches by OCR, reported by OCR. And just the year before that, there was less than half that number of data breaches reported, just under 250, and only 1/4 of that number of individuals were affected. So it's a growing threat. And this year alone, there's already been 300 reported data breaches under investigation this year by that same agency, right? So who's targeted? As recent years, large organizations have been building up their security walls and their infrastructure. Smaller providers remain the lower hanging fruit for a lot of these hackers and bad actors. So there's a focus on smaller regional healthcare providers, down market providers such as specialty clinics or medical imaging facilities. And also just in recent months, there's been a growing focus on large organizations that have a lot of affiliates that handle a lot of records as well. So you see the greater impact that's having on data breaches this year and some of the attacks that hopefully we get to talk about. And also attacks against providers, third-party business associates, and the broader supply chain have also spiked the past several months. So you see all these various actors being targeted by hackers for ransomware, things like that, through tactics like phishing attacks, trying to get personnel's credentials inappropriately. You also have some device-focused attacks that are being that's likely going to be an increasing trend in the coming years. And while medical devices themselves are vulnerable to cyber threats, that's not the goal, right? It's not to hack a single pacemaker or insulin pump. It's really to use those devices to gain entry into a larger hospital network or a larger network of healthcare data. But ultimately, targeting human error is the most likely and continues to be the biggest tactic that a lot of these bad actors are using in the healthcare sector. So, and with increased technology such as AI powered cyber attacks, these bad actors are only going to get more adaptable. There'll be more highly personalized phishing emails, automated exploitation of system vulnerabilities, malware, things like that that avoid detection by traditional systems. So it's definitely an evolving area, but of all things, human error in the healthcare industry, that's going to be the hot target.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so let's double click on that for a minute. Talk a little bit about some of the best practices that you've seen with folks like, United, Ascension, Change. I mean, these are brand name institutions in healthcare who were hacked. Talk about some of the best practices there. And when it comes to the human element that you're referring to, what are some things that some of our community can do to really double check to make sure that the human error is mitigated to reduce cybersecurity threats to the nth degree?
Right. And so you have a lot of these industry standards that we can really point to, right? You have NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have the general framework is you have governance, right? You have policies, procedures, and protocols in place to create an ethos of cybersecurity across the whole organization. You have ways to identify your security risks, and then after that, you protect those security risks. You take those appropriate steps. And then you should also implement regular auditing and monitoring systems to detect potential intrusions and breaches into your cybersecurity space, as well as procedures to respond to those threats, as well as to recover the data that is potentially at risk, right? And so to the extent that these large organizations are implementing them, I think that is always going to be an ongoing effort. And I think that because cybersecurity, especially in healthcare, is an ongoing effort, it's never just a static one and done initiative. There are always going to be evolving vulnerabilities that get overlooked. For instance, United Change Healthcare, right? The CEO would just testify to Congress that the reason that breach happened was because one of the systems that they had acquired wasn't using multi-factor authentication. It's a typical industry standard practice. Now, why in that acquisition and in the ongoing operation of that system that wasn't caught and overlooked? I think that's a internal risk assessment that they need to make. But I think that that's the risk, right? As you're constantly putting in this effort, and especially in healthcare where there's a lot of evolution and a lot of vertical integration, a lot of transactions happening and acquisitions, I think it's all the more important to really know who your partners are, who your targets are, and as you have new players being added onto your system, that they are also incorporated in your cybersecurity ethos.
That's fantastic. And I think just one more quick question. We've about a minute left here. If there was one major trend that you're seeing in cybersecurity that gives you hope, or maybe that you'd recommend everyone be doing to really secure their platforms, what would that include?
One, I think a good trend that we're seeing is that government is responding, right? You have HHS implementing a cybersecurity framework, but also on the flip side of things, we have the evolution of AI. Just as attackers can use that, people can utilize AI in new ways to shore up their systems, to identify vulnerabilities, to have better monitoring capabilities, to detect breaches and vulnerabilities, as well as identify threat intelligence, predictive analytics. Just as AI is a sword for hackers, it can also be used as a shield for healthcare providers and healthcare entities, right? And so investment in great software and great technologies is going to be the answer to all this, as well as incorporating and updating your systems.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Dennis. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I really appreciate your time out of your busy schedule, and enjoy the beautiful spring weather.
Of course. Thanks, Dan.
From cybersecurity to, really double clicking, we talked about women's health earlier today, and we're going to talk about that again today with Dr. Bajaj, Dr. Kamal Bajaj from New York City Hospitals, Health and Hospitals Corporation, the largest public hospital in America. For those of you who don't know, New York City has its own public healthcare system, its own hospital system known as Health and Hospitals Corporation. And Dr. Bajaj can give us more details on how big it is. But let's introduce her and then kick off this round on talking about advancing women's and family diagnostic health equity. Kamal, welcome to the program.
Stan, thank you so much for having me, and just a really warm greetings to the HITLAB community, this important community. And I have to tell you, as an OBGYN and as a chief quality officer, I'm just delighted to be in this space. I feel very at home. And so, Stan, to your point, I really want to talk about women's health and really some of the opportunities within women's health to address really sort of care across the entire continuum. And so I want to sort of introduce the group to Cassie. So Cassie began her prenatal care at 12 weeks of pregnancy. She had had one vaginal delivery and one C-section in the past, and honestly was feeling groovy. She was really looking forward for her daughter and her son to have a younger sibling. On her routine lab, she was found to have a hemoglobin consistent with anemia. Her OB provider, rightfully so, recommended iron, which she took most of the time. At her 28-week visit, her blood was redrawn and her hemoglobin was found to be unchanged despite iron therapy. She was referred to see a hematologist, which she called to make the appointment. And the first available appointment was 3 months from now. And she put herself on the wait list and sort of crossed her fingers that she would get an appointment sooner. Time just flew by and she began feeling contractions at 38 weeks. And just as she had hoped, she had a pretty quick vaginal delivery. A beautiful girl, Annika, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. But at that time, right after delivery, she had a hemorrhage of 600 milliliters, which resolved with medication. She was worried about what had happened, but was glad that it had resolved so quickly because the labor and delivery team had responded so fast. She made it to the postpartum unit for observation, like all patients do, and she was gearing up to breastfeed Annika when she started to feel more sharp pains. She also experienced lightheadedness that just wouldn't go away. She alerted the medical care team, which rushed in to care for her. After doing a bedside ultrasound and also reviewing her labs or her vital signs, the OB team realized that her blood pressure had been low for several hours, but no machine or no person had alerted anyone. The exam revealed a uterus full of clots and they were removed. She was really uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything because she was scared. Several units of blood later and additional medications later, the bleeding stopped. And she felt better, thankfully, due to the transfusion. And she was really glad that Annika had slept almost the whole time in a bassinet nearby during the whole ordeal. She wasn't really sure what had happened, but she was glad it was over, and she went back to the business of bonding with her newborn. 2 days later, Annika and Cassie were both discharged to home. They received a packet of instructions about this big on all the things to look out for. They got settled back home. Allison and Alex, her other children, were in love with their new sister. She Googled postpartum hemorrhage, but it was scary. And so she decided to just close her laptop and never looked at it again. 8 days after delivery, she began to have a few sharp pangs and a little extra blood. She started to panic. Was this normal, or was this the kind of stuff that she should go to the hospital for? She called a friend to come over and made a cup of tea. Thankfully, the symptoms passed. She took a sigh of relief, and she couldn't help but think, was there anything that could have been done sooner or earlier in pregnancy that could have made this easier? And also, why was it so hard to understand? Unfortunately, Cassie's story is not uncommon. And as we all have seen in the media and elsewhere, maternal morbidity and mortality continue to remain a true public health crisis, with Black and brown birthing persons nationally experiencing higher rates than other counterparts. And so while there's a lot of emphasis on mortality, as there should be, for every severe maternal mortality, there are 70 birthing persons who experience a severe complication, like a maternal hemorrhage. And the vast majority, about 80% of these morbidities and mortalities are indeed preventable, And so recognizing that we need to think differently, diagnostic safety science has emerged with tremendous promise as a way of advancing safe maternal care. And so what is diagnostic excellence? Simply put, it's accurate and timely identification of a health problem and effective communication of that health problem. There is so much attention around this that the National Academies hosted a workshop on the topic of diagnostic excellence. And Biden's Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology issued a safety report, which included a focus on diagnostic errors. Now, diagnostic safety is not new to medicine. It just hasn't been really applied well in women's health, and certainly digital technologies can really advance diagnosis. About 800,000 diagnostic errors occur in US hospitals, and 1 in 20 individuals who receive outpatient care will experience a diagnostic error, sometimes without harm, but will experience an error. So as we look on this call, a handful of us, right, at least will experience a diagnostic error this year. And so the diagnostic process, this also comes from the National Academies, is mapped out like this, right? From the time that someone experiences a problem all the way through the evaluation and communication. And not only do tools and technologies have to think about that diagnostic process, but sort of the various ways in which people experience care and all the tools and the physical environments and the team members that are involved. And so Cassie's journey that I shared with you, there were several opportunities to improve diagnosis, and I'm firmly convinced that our technologies and tools could have helped at each step. The first was early and thorough investigation of her anemia. It didn't change at 28 weeks, and yet when she called, the appointment wasn't available for 3 months, right? And so this should have prompted earlier evaluation, given that pregnancy is a time-limited condition. There was an opportunity for communication and coordination of care through hematology, but also in sort of talking to Cassie and her support system about sort of opportunities to address anemia. A preparation for high-risk scenarios. Cassie came into the hospital for her delivery with known anemia. What could the readiness have included for this high-risk scenario? And then, as mentioned, right, her blood pressure had been low for hours. She'd been experiencing symptoms for hours in the postpartum care. And how could our tools have helped flag that earlier? And then the post-discharge follow-up and instructions, right? Rather than a stack of papers, what can we provide to both patients and care teams to make this journey easier? Now, I'm heartened again because I'm in a room of innovators and improvers. And I'd like to provoke the audience to really think about some solutions that can help address the nonlinear diagnostic process. And so here are a few sort of ripe targets. Enhanced risk prediction and early recognition of problems, improve coordination and collaboration amongst the various types of care providers that see patients during pregnancy, elimination of disparities, including inadequate access to care, development of data infrastructures that really help capture the nature of diagnostic errors and events that happen, best practices for remote monitoring, inclusion of pregnant persons in the development of technology, and materials, education, training, other supports that help accelerate the understanding of the diagnostic process. And so, you know, as I think about this wonderful audience and all that we can do together, we can and we must do better. And I have no doubt that digital technologies, especially those that advance diagnostic excellence in maternal care, is one way of doing just that. And so I look forward to the continued conversation. Back to you, Stan.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Kamal, thank you so much. And again, I think this is a big part of why we have these. So appreciate your time today. One of the things that everyone in the audience should be aware of is the Wednesday afternoon programs we have from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time that really dive into women's health tech, and not just the technology side and the digital adoption side, but we talk about funding, we talk about pathways and career advice, professional development advice for women who are leading not just health tech for patients, but also healthcare and health tech venture. So if you have not, click on that QR code and register and get on the list for these phenomenal programs. Even if you are not able to join some Wednesdays from 12:30 to 1 p.m., then subscribe to our YouTube channel, and these drop on our YouTube channel, and you'll get a notice when they do. And you can always catch up and listen in from the comfort of wherever and whenever you want to be able to do that. And next up on the program, we have a very important panel talking about very important things, which is this. Now, I guess we can call it a trend, and maybe that'll be one of the things we talk about. Is this a trend now or not? And we've seen in January, Lilly Direct come out with a platform for patients to access their Lilly pharmaceutical, some of their Lilly products online with a telemedicine visit. And now Pfizer has done the same thing with their direct to patient, direct to consumer offering, specifically now for Paxlovid, and surely a lot more in the future as they begin to expand and roll out this product and this offering. And we have three experts in the area of telemedicine and digital health and life sciences. First, we have Matthew Holt, who is a 30-year veteran of digital health and understands the trends and the trend lines and the adoption rates of how these different technologies are adopted in the healthcare system and developed. And he is the founder and the author of the Healthcare Blog. And then we have Robert Rodriguez, who's also a 30-year veteran in digital health. He comes out of Manhattan College. For those of you who are from New York City, you know the fine Jesuit institution, and actually located in the Bronx, because it used to be in Manhattan when it was founded. And he is an exit veteran, and again came out of Manhattan College, worked at Quasha Lipton, the benefits consulting firm that was very tied to a lot of the healthcare reform efforts that we saw in the 90s, including some early efforts around HIPAA and things like that. And has now founded Helix VM and is seeing a very high growth number in his company, Helix, and is seeing a lot of good success there. And with him is his VP of Operations, Trisha Kazankas, also from Helix VM. And so today we are fortunate to have these three experts to talk about this trend we're seeing and this really high growth asymmetrical telemedicine use and growth in life science and direct to patient consumer pharmaceutical strategies. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
We'll start off by giving Trisha the first question. Trisha, again, thanks for joining. And if you could tell us a little bit about how Lilly Direct and Pfizer's DTC plans are potentially going to integrate with existing telemedicine services and telehealth services to help patients really access medications in ways that are going to be not only of high experience for them and easy to get to, but also allow them some of the follow-up care that they're going to need in doing that. And we've seen elements of this, right? Like, for instance, in Detroit, we see that 80% of Detroit residents don't have transportation, and so they have to use public transportation. So getting to a physician to get to their pharmaceuticals is not an easy task, as most Americans take for granted. But Trisha, walk us through a little bit about that element that you're seeing.
Sure. Well, thank you. First and foremost, thank you for having us today. I think this is a great topic, and certainly part of a culture which I would say adapt or die, right? Because telehealth, I think, is instrumental in general. Like you said, Detroit is having those problems, but so are so many people across the country. So any help that can be provided to those people is great. So for Pfizer or Eli Lilly or anyone, adapting these programs are just incredibly instrumental. It gives patients the faster service, the better quality, the fact that they don't have to leave their home to go get care, and that people are just there to help them. in their recovery phase. We all know that the faster patients can get care, the faster they're going to get better, and the faster they're going to have a better quality of life. As a cancer patient myself, I can speak personally and professionally for those systems and the great opportunity we have in the pharma segment of things to make such great improvements for patients there. It's convenient. It's just a win-win for everybody. So
yeah, no, those are great insights. And again, Tricia, I hope that everything's going well with your cancer treatment.
Very well. Thank you. Very well.
No, certainly.
No.
We wish you the best on that. But and I think the idea that we're talking about accessibility, that's also balanced with a lot of folks that are just trying to understand, what the potential risks are, and we'll talk about those as well. And no one is a bigger curmudgeon when it comes to healthcare and life sciences than our next guest, Matthew Holt. So maybe Matthew can lay into some of the risks and some of the elements of direct-to-consumer pharmaceuticals that are challenges that we should be looking at, and how we should be mitigating some of those risks as we increase accessibility and affordability. Are there challenges as well, Matthew, that concern you?
Well, Matt, Stan, thank you. And hi, Tricia. Hi, Robert. Hi, everyone. Let's be real. The telehealth boom during the pandemic, it was not properly, integrated into the workflow of clinicians or how patients usually went about their care. It's gone away because we haven't figured out a way to, even though telehealth and remote monitoring are obviously much, much bigger than they were pre-pandemic, they're nowhere near where they were at the height, and they're nowhere near where they could be overall. So it's still figuring out its way how to fit into a healthcare system that's predominantly fee-for-service, when really what telehealth and remote patient monitoring and what I call the continuous clinic, which I think I talked about, Stan, on one of your sessions 5 years ago, so it's not exactly a brand new idea, have not been created and integrated into the way that the healthcare system works. We're not doing, proper 24/7 monitoring of people with chronic illness. It's still very hard for people, whether they're a cancer patient like Tricia or someone with chronic illness, to access care easily on a 24/7 basis, and you just go applies for mental health, chronic care, and and many other forms of care. So into this world, we drop this neutron bomb of the GLP-1s, right? Which is my word. We have a drug which looks like it works incredibly well for about a third of the population. Oh, and by the way, if we paid the Danish price for Ozempic, it would cost us $150 billion a year. But we're not paying the Danish price, right? The American price is, 10 to 15 times that. Is going to be, it could add $1 trillion plus onto the healthcare system. So you have this real scrabble where the American healthcare system is not ready to figure this out. And so you are seeing, we're not talking about Lilly Direct and the Pfizer one to come in a vacuum. We're seeing these telehealth plays, which are being magnified by other compounding pharmacies who are trying to deliver different versions of the GLP-1s, by folks like Roe and Hims, who are delivering it on a sort of prescription basis, and other players in the weight loss field, the folks like Vita and Verta and all the others, trying to figure out how to fit them into sort of the diabetes and weight loss treatment they're already doing. So I would say that, number one, you mentioned affordability. There's no such thing as an affordable GLP-1. I mean, the price is we have to figure out a way to deal with the pricing of it. If it is as important and necessary a drug as it seems to be, or the drugs as they seem to, drug class they seem to be. And by the way, there are more coming. There's not just, the Lilly and the Novo Nordisk one. There's a bunch of others which look like they might be more powerful and do even better, yet to come. So we have to figure out a pricing mechanism that makes sense for that. And then the second thing is we have to figure out a way to afford to easily, do what Tricia's talking about, get people access not just to the drug and the prescription, but also to the aftercare and the support they need it. Because we're talking a lot about putting people on this drug for a while and then taking them off. And does that just revert back to the GLP-1s? Does it just revert back to the issues people had before? Is it just masking the symptom rather than actually curing it? So I think we're very early in this. It is a little surprising that you'd have a pharma company decide that they're going to go literally direct, put it in the brand name. Obviously, they're not delivering the service. It's being delivered via other companies and being fulfilled by other companies. It's a little surprising to me that they jumped in that, because it's not as if people are really struggling to get the drug otherwise. I mean, the drug use of these GLP-1s is growing fast. On the Pfizer side, who knows what they're going to do, because their main market, obviously on the vaccine and Paxlovid, seems to be going away as at least the attention around COVID leaves. But I don't know if we will see significant numbers of other drug companies diving in and delivering and essentially creating a brand related pharmacy. But we might do, and the question is, what support are they going to put around that?
Yeah, great point. And just from what we're hearing and seeing from the life science executives that we work with, there's a lot of interest in that. So we're anticipating a substantial adoption rate of these sorts of services within life sciences over the next year or two, and we'll see how it works out. I think the topics that you bring up, the really the issues, the challenges that you're bringing up are spot on. Robert, let's talk a little bit more about challenges and less from a policy side, like Matthew's just gone through, but more into the challenges side of the technical components. Obviously, when people think about health tech today, nothing is more prevalent than artificial intelligence. Whether that's the proper term for what actually is being used today in technology is another discussion, but we'll call it artificial intelligence for the sake of debate here. And artificial intelligence is obviously a critical component to all of this as we're building machine learning tools and algorithms around platforms like LillyDirect and Pfizer DTC. But tell us a little bit more. You've got a phenomenal technical background, not just in telemedicine, but obviously in medical clinics and pharmacies and everything that you've done in your last 3 decades of experience. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with AI when it comes to deploying these sorts of technologies?
Well, as it relates to the deployment of the technology, I think that adoption is very important, but it's adoption on both ends. It's not just adoption for the patient, but it's also adoption for the providers. And so I think that on the first side, on the patient side, patients are impatient and they want to just get things done and move on. It's like you go into the doctor's office and they give you a form and you basically just check off random boxes and you move on. Well, guess what? If you wanted this to work in an AI world, it can't work that way. So I think the first thing is, obviously patient conditioning to make sure that they understand the importance of what they're doing from the perspective of using it within a decision support framework is extremely important. And so that's going to take time for people to get comfortable with the use of these tools, particularly as a data aggregation method, okay? Because that's principally what these are today at this point, okay? And then I think on the provider side, what's extremely important is, frankly, a little bit of a training issue and making sure that they learn to read first. It never shocks me how you could give a doctor, in essence, an AI output, and they're like, they don't read it. So without reading it, it's very, very hard to understand what the value is if you're going to basically go back and get the patient either on camera or in person and literally walk through the entire process all over again. Okay, very frustrating for patients. It drains a lot of time. It's not inherently profitable, but it is a habit. So I think that the trust levels have to improve by the providers, that the information that they're getting is good and that it's reliable. And obviously, in order for that information to be reliable and good, they need to have confidence that the patient is actually providing the information. So, one of the things that we've done, for example, in order to increase that trust level, is we actually provide the physicians the actual questions the AI asks. Because a lot of times they're like, well, did he ask the right question? Did the AI do this? Did the AI do that? Well, here's the entirety of it. Another thing that we do on the platform is we try to bring in objective data, not just the subjective data the patient gives. Again, in order to increase the level of comfort that the provider has, that the information that they're staring at is information that's been properly gathered. So very, very important, because I think that's where, from a legal perspective as well as from an economic perspective, getting that adoption by the providers and getting that comfort level is really where I think the economic value is of an AI within a clinical setting.
No, that's really well put. And Tricia, let's dive back into something you said earlier that was really interesting, which was really around the accessibility, and we talked a little bit about that, not just for the folks in Detroit, but rural Americans and a lot of folks that have trouble getting to a pharmacy. Just even the town I grew up in, the nearest pharmacy was a half hour away. So talk a little bit more about that. What are some other benefits that you're seeing in telemedicine and in these sort of direct to consumer channels that we're seeing manufacturers develop?
Well, first and foremost, Detroit's come up now a couple times, so big shout out to Detroit because I was born and raised there. So I always have my heart there and wish that town, they've come so far recently as towns around Detroit have, and one of their biggest fans to get them back to a good level there. So love Detroit. But yes, I just wanted to touch first on something Robert had said, because being in healthcare for 30 years, I came from, when I started in healthcare, from paper charts, right? So a patient not only signed in on a paper chart, but the care was provided in a paper world, slow, inefficient. You never knew what the patient was doing elsewhere, right? So there was no way to verify or validate what was going on with that patient as a whole. So, again, I think where we are today and watching over the last 30 years of the development of not just now telehealth, which is huge, but the steps in between, right? From paper charting to EMR to better EMR systems, and watching that growth and development has been extremely just, it blows your mind because it's just come so far. And from the patient perspective, as it relates to your question, the same is happening. It's not just that our physicians know more, our physicians are able to do more, our physicians are able to prescribe more quickly, get the medication to the pharmacy more quickly. But all of that, the outcome is the same, and that's a better treatment plan for the patient, a faster turnaround for that treatment for the patient, and a more accessible, to your point, platform for patients to be able to go to. They don't have to interrupt their work schedule. They don't have to interrupt their anything else that limits them from being able to get access to a physician or medication or a plan of care that's going to get them better is there for them. And that accessibility means better, quicker.
That's great. And Matt, you talked a little bit about that too, right? When she's talking about health equity in terms of accessibility, but you also talked about some of the health economics around these GLP-1s. And maybe double click on that as well. You're a big health equity.
Well,
so
yeah. So I would say, there are two contradictory things, right? One is, how do you manage and best manage the care of people when they need it, which is delivering care. By the way, also for people with different chronic conditions, changing medication regimens, changing amounts, really noticing this. If you look at the people who are managed best of things like hypertension, heart failure, diabetes, there's a lot of it, and the companies that do this very well, there's a lot of interactions between the sort of the hybrid primary care groups and the folks who manage, the doctors and the clinicians who are managing this. There's a lot of interactions. There's not just the one visit every 3 months, every 6 months. And there's a lot of titration of medications and that kind of stuff. So that's why you need the ability to access, people easily, because, but yet telehealth really hasn't gone very far. So I think my concern, Stan, is that it doesn't fit into the way that we're paying for healthcare at the moment in general. Now, then you talk about the GLP-1s, you talk about, access to these highly expensive drugs. Lilly and these others have decided that, they're going to take this access problem head on. They're going to integrate in things like patient support and all the rest of that. But that's only going to go so far. In the end, it's another access point to telehealth for these particular medications, particular diseases. But I don't really see them and pharma companies as a whole as becoming care delivery organizations, which is what we need. We need to work, whether it's GLP-1 or any other form of medication, into the whole of the care delivery that we're delivering these people with chronic illnesses. And until we figure out a way to do that better, and for the main healthcare system, to react and incorporate these technologies in a way much more so than it's done so far, we're not going to get that. So to me, this is a modest attempt to give us another access point. It's not a reformation of the whole system.
There we go. Yeah, that's spot on. And that's going to, we do need a much better system. And of course, if anyone wants to know about how healthcare is going to look in 10 years, ask Matt and see how far
they can ask you too, Stan, but we've been saying this for a long time, and 10 years away has always been, a long time in the future. Well, and it's remained that every time we've done this for 30 years.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why Robert's here, because Robert's going to take healthcare and make it look like Uber. So Robert, let's talk about that. How does AI play a role in helping accelerate not only the development of some of these direct consumer manufacturer platforms that we're seeing from Lilly and Pfizer, but also accelerate the optimal use so that patients do have more like a Uber for healthcare experience when they're trying to get a pharmacy or get a doctor's appointment?
Well, I think there are a variety of factors. I think it's AI plus workflow is very important, because without workflow, the AI just, in essence, is just nothing more than a provisioning of data. So, my view is, for example, that, the role that AI can play is to help, in essence, validate a patient for a Pfizer Direct, validate a patient for an Eli Lilly. They spend millions of dollars on consumer marketing. They spend millions of dollars marketing doctors, but that gap between when the patient knows about a medication and when they actually go into the doctor's office, it's a pretty big leap. So the AI, telemedicine, and smart workflows around that can really bridge the gap, including to the point of being able to qualify a patient, even get an authorization for treatment before that patient even goes to their attending physician. So that's really where I think a lot of this is the AI and the automation help, but you do have to put together workflows. I do think that, to Matthew's point, that that there's an issue that with the drug companies, that they're in essence trying to create volume into very narrow provider networks. And really, when you're looking at caring for a patient on a global basis, that narrow provider network is going to come short. Okay, they play an important part, but it's not everything. So even if they are doing a good job of qualifying patients, getting them into physicians that will, in essence, support the distribution of their product, at the end of the day, that patient is still going to need a lot more care navigation tools, and it's not clear to me how a Pfizer or an Eli Lilly Direct is going to be able to do that on behalf of the patients. I think that there's other digital health platforms that are certainly making progress on that and offering a more true GP PCP type of experience for the patient.
Just to follow on Robert's point for a second there, Stan, that is the issue. If you look at the companies that have pre-GLP-1s been managing diabetes and weight loss and what have you, they have a bunch of stuff around it. It hasn't been particularly effective. And in fact, the Peterson Institute said they weren't effective, but they have a bunch of tools around it, and coaching and devices and medical management of various flavors. We have had the CCM and the RPM and the RTM codes under Medicare and elsewhere trying to help promote this. But we haven't really built that system that Rob was talking about. And, then if you throw into this, the problem is that a lot of the insurers are wanting to get people off the GLP-1s and say, well, maybe that at 6 months, they've dropped their 20 pounds. Maybe we can maintain them without keeping those drugs on. That's in direct contradiction to what Lilly and Novo Nordisk and the others want. So to me, we have a lot to work out. And as I think Robert's point was, this is direct access to a very narrow network for a specific particular drug, which is probably not the way you'd want it to go longer term. But nonetheless, as he said, a lot of interest from this in pharma companies, because they're trying to figure out how can they get any one person more they can give them that drug at that price is very valuable.
Well, thank you everyone for joining today. We are absolutely incredibly grateful for your time today. We know how busy you all are. And we'll look forward to updates from you all later on the progression of this over the next coming months. And again, we have next with us, Justin, we are really cooking on this supply chain side activity in digital health. And who better to talk to when it comes to supply chain than both Joanne Waters, again, like our last panelists, a multi-decade veteran in this area, and of course, Randy Subramani, who's one of the leaders of the supply chain activities at the country's largest private hospital. So we have the public hospital leader here about an hour ago, and now Randy from the private hospital side. Randy and Joanne, thank you for joining us today. Really great to see you both, and again, appreciate your time today, knowing how busy that you both are. It would be great if you could, Joanne, maybe you could lead us off with a little bit of a background on how data-driven optimization, we're diving straight into this, of pharmaceuticals and the supply chain around pharmaceuticals and medication adherence for this is something that is helping improve the affordability and the accessibility of medications for patients around the country.
Thank you, Stan. Pardon me, I have allergies. Apparently, I have decided to come for a visit. So sorry about that.
No worries.
So that's a lot. Being Canadian, that's a lot of A's when we talk about accessibility, affordability, and accessibility, right? So with regard to data and medication adherence, obviously when it comes to availability, and Randy can help in with this as well, with related to supply chain. So when we look at accessibility, why is it less accessible perhaps today than, let's say, a year ago? It could be possibly related to some waste, excessive waste. Our company's been in clinical trials and drug development for the last 20 years, and those are hot topics that everyone discusses and continue to discuss, is the waste that goes on in drug development processes. And obviously the same in the academic, in the consumer world, where waste is there. So if we can make less waste, maybe it will be more accessible to have patients with medications in their hands, right? Affordability, it's basically around the same idea, right? So when we talk about affordability, if we reduce waste, we reduce the cost. And one of the biggest costs to healthcare globally, worldwide, is medication non-adherence or non-compliance to treatment, right? So if we can help patients engage, that's even better. And then feed that supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. When we talk accessibility, again, how can we keep patients? Well, actually, we have to get patients, right? We get a patient. How are we going to make medication accessible to them? And then how, again, are we going to keep them on track taking their medicine? So that's basically covers that. When you talk about, creating data at the speed of light, when you can do data with digital tools and in real time, that's where that elevates the speed of light for data exchange between a patient and a care team. So that's sort of how I see it.
That's fantastic. And that is a really good insight for the audience. And again, if you have questions or anything like that, please do message us either in the chat box here or connect me up with me on LinkedIn to do that, a little bit more conversation on the side. But, Randy, following up on that, obviously, there's a number of challenges that the medication supply chain is facing, particularly executives in your role in hospital systems. What kind of challenges are you seeing when you're, helping run some of some of the biggest supplies in a private hospital system on medication flow, and how you're seeing these challenges impact medication adherence?
Stan, thank you. Such a great question, and one in and of itself that we could have an entire panel on. So I'll try to keep my commentary in a more summary manner. And my expertise is more, as Joanne hit on, the availability of it. So I'll term it as like maybe 4 primary challenges and like 3 secondary, for lack of better terms. I think the first, and Joanne touched on it, it's a balance of inventory management. With pharmacies that are trying to, whether it's experiencing stockouts or overstocking, both have critical effects on how we forecast for demand, variability in prescription rates. But in essence, if we understock or if we overstock, it drives towards challenges with medication adherence. Simply put, stockouts, medication's not available. Overstock, you create excess or you create waste that then financially, as I'm sure everyone can imagine, these drugs, for the most part, are not fundamentally very, very cheap, and hospitals operate at a very, very slim margin. So any sort of waste in the system just detracts from the ability for hospitals to just buy more supplies so patients can adhere to what they need for their medical care. I think with that said, it's worth acknowledging fundamentally, we all know, but again, key to medication adherence, that this industry is highly regulated. International, national, regional jurisdictions, excessive documentations, audits, you have the good manufacturing practices, the good distribution practices, all of which, if there's any wrinkle in any one of these processes, it creates disruptions. Disruptions in the forms of recalls, disruptions in the form of delayed shipments, disruptions that at the end of the day lead to the patients not receiving what they need for their treatment. Relatedly, and again, I would say we've made a lot of advancements in what I'm describing, but not at the speed of light that we need to. The third would be cold chain management. I think everyone's aware that a lot of medication requires very specific criteria when it comes to shipment, preparation. And again, we've made significant advancements in the packaging space, but there still are gaps and there's still opportunities where supply chain managers worry about the fundamentals. Drugs come in, have they been maintained at the at the appropriate temperature levels? And some drugs have very, very, very narrow windows of temperature requirements. So in essence, again, drug comes in not at the right layer of integrity. It just affects the availability of the drug. And then I think last, I'll hit on this more, it's the end-to-end just supply chain visibility and data integration. In the United States, there's so many players that are involved in the production, the distribution, and the availability of drugs. It's not as though we have this ecosystem where everyone talks, or we have systems that integrate clearly with one another so we have real-time information. And in the end, again, it's as a hospital leader, it's very simple. Drugs come in, or medications come in, we provide them to our patients so they can receive their treatment. But not having the right data and having it visible in real time gets back to what Joanne referenced. It produces inventory management challenges. And then I'll just end by saying, we still continue to notice trends with counterfeit drugs. Supply chains remain global, so any sort of geopolitical conflict can escalate challenges with adherence very, very quickly. And lastly, in this era, cybersecurity is of the utmost importance. And we notice more and more that health organizations, hospitals, pharmaceutical organizations, prescription benefit managers become targets of these attacks, which all just take away from the fundamental of medications not being readily available for patients. So, Stan, I know I rattled off a lot. I'll stop there, and I'm sure Joanne will connect some of the dots. More and more
I was trying to hold back and not jump in.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that.
Okay, so Joanne, no pressure. You've got to connect all the dots there. But no, let's really focus. I do want to really hone in on the comments that he was talking about for medication technologies and just and emerging technologies, Joanne, that you're seeing to improve medication adherence, because we know that 99% of healthcare issues, or 90%, some extraordinary number, are behaviorally related. And so if you could talk about some of the technologies that you're seeing coming up that you think could help with patient behavior and improve medication adherence.
Yeah, thanks. So Randy, on the really excellent bang on identifying of all the issues, or many of the issues in the supply chain, right? So you touched a lot of points that, in my experience over these last 18 years working in smart technology and digital health solutions for adherence tracking and drug tracking and traceability, this is where it may, Matt previously in the previous workshop was talking about the whole of the care delivery system, right? So if changing medications, titration, that sort of thing, it's probably or could be related to a patient not being treatment compliant, right? So they're going to up the drug dose, they're going to change the brand of the drug, all of this, right? So when we talk about making that supply chain smarter, when you can use something with printed sensors and smart technology built in packaging, such as a pill bottle or a blister card or an injectable, whatever it could be, that point of packaging from the manufacturer actually solves a lot of those supply chain little hiccups, right? And that end up being money related hiccups. So the first off, when you talk about diversion of the drug, the integrity of the product, excuse me, the stability of the product, we can detect, well, technology can detect all of that throughout the entire chain of custody. So the moment that drugs are packaged, all the way through when they come in through your network, and when they're handed out to patients, from the moment that patient takes their drug, all of that data throughout the continuum of care is immediately available, right? So this is where the telemedicine and the digital health is really strengthening supply chains and helping to keep patients actually on their treatment and improve their health in the end. And I think that's where visibility in these types of technologies can actually really elevate success of the patient. The other comments related to artificial intelligence is a big one, right? So, but artificial intelligence, you need better data and reliable data in order to strengthen those algorithms to feed into your supply chain. So all of that is impacted, and even with wearables, right? So you can talk about wearables, the wearable data. Why is it reading this way? Perhaps it's related because patients aren't following treatment. So lots of really cool technologies are available. And, you know, as Randy mentions, there's a lot of stakeholders involved along the way. So it's going to take, you know, a lot of collaboration and partnerships to do this sort of thing for the betterment of health and to speed up that data to the speed of light.
That's amazing. No, just a phenomenal piece of background there, and then we'll wind it up again. Randy, if you could just talk a little bit about, you know, some of the similar kind of themes and some of the similar kind of efforts. And you know, I think when we talk about supply chain and what's happening with you know, on the hospital side, the health system side, the provider side, you know, just collaborating to implement these kinds of personalized medication adherence interventions is a task in and of itself. Talk a little bit about how supply chain directors and leaders in the provider side of things can do that and can collaborate and help implement that kind of personalized system and you know, with you know, kind of patient specific preferences and data.
Yeah, Stan, it's such a great question, and it's one now more than ever that we certainly need to get right. And I think part of the challenge, before I get into maybe solutions and the path forward, is just hospitals have so many diverging priorities. So I think the first answer to your question is it starts really at the executive level and the buy-in to the value of, or the investment, I would say, into a supply chain and why we need to get this correct. To Joanne's point, there is so, and to my comment earlier about the technology is already, in a way, we've made so many strides over the past few years. A lot of the great technology already exists. It's already out there in some capacity. Is it at the scale where it will be in 5 years? No. So I think the first stand is the vision of executive leaders to buy in at the pharmacy level, at the implant level, the value in driving technology as an enabler to accomplish or alleviate some of the challenges I referenced. So part of that could be, you know, how Joanne's point, collecting data in our EHR, in mobile apps, in our pharmacy records. And then possibly now, because that's just assuming you have the right data, that's a ton, for a lack of better terms, of data, utilizing like artificial intelligence in the future state to help analyze, interpret, and in a way prescribe, no pun intended, or predict where, from a supply chain perspective, like what inventory levels we need to manage. Tracking at the level of transportation and using like sensor technology to know where drugs exactly are. I think that's one fragment of as a supply chain leader. As the second stand, get to your point, as supply chain leaders now, and maybe I'll wrap up with this comment, we are becoming more obsessed with not just advanced analytics, but predictive analytics so we can deliver personalized care. And I think, again, it comes back to viewing, easier said than done, viewing this work as an ecosystem where every partner has to play. I know that's speaking in general terms, and it sounds great conceptually, but now more than ever, I remain optimistic as a supply chain leader that our communications with manufacturers, with regulators, and we need folks like Joanne and her organization to provide the technology, because candidly, hospitals are not directly in the business of innovating. We want to be innovative in what we provide to patients, but we need partners along the way. So I'll summarize it as buy-in at the top level, gathering and analyzing data with, again, I want to keep this theme of utilizing artificial intelligence, because heck, it's impressive what's being done in this day and age, and we'll just get better and better, or faster and faster. And then just the reality of we have to kind of work together and understand the value of every partner in the ecosystem.
That's fantastic. That's a great way to end it. Thank you both for such an informative panel, and appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy, and we're getting you out at 12:30 on the dot Eastern. So good luck in your next meetings, guys. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We have a lot to talk about when it comes to digital across the ecosystem, including supply chain, including adherence, including telemedicine, and the new manufacturer direct to consumer sites are coming in. And next up, we're going to be talking about the actual use of AI in healthcare by one of New York City's healthcare leaders, Dr. David Berger, who's the CEO of Downstate Medical Center, SUNY Downstate officially Medical Center, and HITLAB's own Riley Fink, who's one of the innovation strategy managers at the lab, will be interviewing Dr. Berger to understand what some of the realities are right now and where is AI actually being used. And handing the virtual mic over to Riley. Riley.
You are a frequenter of our HITLAB events, but for those that maybe don't know you, please just take a moment to give a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Riley. And it's great to be here again this afternoon. I'm David Berger. I'm the CEO of University Hospital at Downstate. I am a surgeon by training and actually went to medical school at Downstate, did my general surgery training at Downstate, and then did surgical oncology at UT MD Anderson in Houston. I have about a 25-year career in hospital administration and a master's in healthcare management from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. I've been at Downstate now for 4 years after a 20-year stint at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. I am very, very much an advocate of digital health and AI and how it's going to transform healthcare, and I'm a board member of the Breakthrough Alliance, part of HITLAB.
Amazing. Thank you for that excellent transition. So as Stan mentioned, let's talk a little bit about how we can realize the potential of AI in healthcare. So what are some of those implementation challenges that you're facing regarding AI?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is educating the workforce. I think there is a huge amount of misunderstanding of what AI is. There's a huge amount of fear of AI, especially AI taking over people's work and forcing them out of the workforce, and people losing jobs because of artificial intelligence and digital health tools. So I think really the first thing that we're embarking on is trying to educate the entire workforce within the healthcare ecosystem that we are part of as to what AI does, how can AI help them become more efficient in what they do every day, and the fact that AI is not the boogeyman, but actually is potentially an extremely useful tool.
Yeah, I think AI needs to get a better PR team so that they can combat some of the false narratives that are being spread out there that are creating some challenges for you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the use cases that you're considering implementing?
Yeah, so when I look at digital health solutions and AI specifically, I look at 4 specific areas within the healthcare ecosystem, especially around hospitals. So the first, and we just heard about supply chain, but back office functions, revenue cycle, supply chain, coding and billing, those kind of issues is one. The second place I look at it is in terms of the front end, which is access, actually helping people get access to the healthcare system and getting the proper access to the healthcare system. And then inside is clinical care delivery. So there's the operational issues associated with clinical care delivery. How do we schedule x-rays? Who do we prioritize? How do we get patients through the hospital? And then there's actually the delivery of clinical care. So what does that mean? That means decision support. It means using radiology and AI to supplement how radiologists are reading x-rays, mammograms, head CT scans. So those are really the 4 different areas. Now, in terms of implementing and how you prioritize and thinking about the workforce and some of the challenges with the workforce, I really look at the back end first in terms of use cases. I think those are some of the most well-developed use cases in AI, especially looking at revenue cycle, coding and billing issues, pre-authorization, dealing with denials. I think that is a no-brainer in terms of being able to use AI, and that comes with some of the least amount of worker challenges, although you are potentially displacing some of the people that are involved in those specific functions. Much harder and much more challenging is dealing with the clinical issues. And I'll give you an example of an issue I ran into. So one of the biggest places for medical error is the issue in incorrect diagnoses. So we've been working with a company, and they help provide decision support at the point of care within the electronic health record for clinicians. And we had a pilot, very reasonable cost sharing, not a big expense to the institution, so very excited about it. Well, we gave it to our internal medicine residents, and no one used it. And we went to the chief residents from internal medicine, and we said, what's going on? This is really simple. It helps make diagnoses. It helps determine the care pathways. Why isn't it being used? And the medical chief resident said, well, the junior residents really need to learn how to do this stuff on their own. There was a total failure in understanding what the problems with relying on junior residents is or are, and how this technology and artificial intelligence can actually help them to do their jobs much better.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to take away the learning opportunities for those providers, but you want to help them learn about the future for them, which is that AI is going to be involved in their career path. And so learning how to adopt it is going to be an important part of their journey. Can you talk a little bit more about where you see that future of AI in healthcare and where it's going and kind of what your vision is?
Yeah, so I think, and you've heard from other speakers about AI this morning, this afternoon, it's clearly going to transform healthcare. And the big piece of it is the issue of how much data we now have and how much data is added to medical knowledge every single day. And how do we apply that data most effectively to take care of an individual patient, where they want to be taken care of, and to prevent them from developing significant comorbid and potentially mortal disease. So that's really where I think AI is going to have the most impact, and that is prevention, early identification of medical issues to head off deterioration and significant complications from medical problems, and within healthcare settings, being able to identify people at risk from progressing and developing bad outcomes and being able to intervene much earlier. I think that we need to start looking at how we educate medical providers. We currently spend a huge amount of time teaching physicians, nurses, technicians, things that they have to memorize that they can access within seconds anywhere. So, for example, I spent a huge amount of time, and this still happens. Medical students are forced to learn what's called the Krebs cycle, which is glucose cycle, how energy is produced in the cell. What an amazing waste of time. I can pull that up in seconds. Medical education must now include informatics and specifically how to use data and how to use digital and artificial intelligence. We need to have a healthcare workforce that is digital native, just like we now have generations that are internet and digital native. We need a healthcare workforce that is totally digital native.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I know that there's a lot of uncertainty around AI in the future and in healthcare, but with people such as yourself leading these charges and initiatives, I certainly feel better. So hopefully we can, learn from you and follow your guidance and, make sure that we're implementing things in the proper way. So thank you again for your time. It's always great to chat with you. And that's all we have for today from Dr. Berger, but please feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn, and we really appreciate your insights.
Yep. Thanks again, Riley. It's always great to be part of HITLAB and the symposium. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, Stan, back over to you.
For those of you who want to be able to meet Dr. Berger in person, be sure to sign up for the HITLAB Innovators Summit 2024, the Global Digital Health Evidence Review, where we get together for 3 days and look at the latest evidence and the latest trends in the adoption of digital technologies across health systems, hospitals, physicians, certainly life science companies, and certainly health plans. So it'd be great to see you all there. And again, that's in person at the Microsoft Tech Center, 11 Times Square in the middle of Manhattan. So hoping you all can make it. And we are about midway through the program today, and we're very excited to continue on with HITLAB's own Jerry Antomato, who's one of the folks who leads all of our good communities across the lab, and James Drake, who's not only an investor but also an operator of a company called Heroic. And we'll hand it over to Jerry. Jerry, it's all yours.
It's my pleasure today to be speaking with James Drake, who I had the distinct pleasure to meet at the New York City Health Innovation Week earlier on this month. James, wonderful to see you and have you on the program. For those in the audience that aren't familiar with you, if you would, we'd love to hear a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Just, really quick, I started in the M&A industry, did a couple startups, became a VC. One of the companies we invested in was in the special homes for special care or special needs space, which led us into pharmacies, nursing homes, retirement homes. And as we tried to scale those businesses, I was introduced to digital health. And so once I found digital health, I found HITLAB, found the program at Columbia, and now I'm kind of, I guess, part of the cult.
Well, it's wonderful to have you as part of the community, James. And I think the founders especially, and some of the investors who are on the program today would love to hear from you about some of the primary reasons right now. And digital health isn't, it's not a new thing, but VCs we're seeing are increasingly investing in it right now. Can you give us some of the reasons you're seeing as to what the uptick is in terms of the investments coming in?
Yeah, for me, I think it's probably that it's, as you said, it's not new. So it's been de-risked. I think, I told a story at the New York event that, my first digital health investment was back in 2014. And that company failed and we lost all our money. And, it was a sad story because the company's technology was fantastic and it worked, but it was too early. And so I think one of the things that's happened now is that it's no longer too early. There's lots of proven use cases, but most importantly, consumers, physicians, and healthcare systems payers are all comfortable with digital health, and they've all seen success stories from it. And so once you see success stories, you believe that the next one could also be a success story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a really powerful thing, and that's something that Stan and the HITLAB team have really honed in on ever since we started doing a lot of evidence-based research and saw the importance of making sure that we could really prove the efficacy of these different solutions, which is what we continue to do today. And I think that's a really top reason as to why we're seeing some of these VCs increase their investments even more so in the climate. we'd love to hear from you a little bit about during the pandemic. Of course, we were all shut down, but from that, with you being a VC yourself, an investor, how has the pandemic influenced how VCs are now investing in the landscape?
Again, I think it comes down to this idea that it's mainstream now, or it's more mainstream. Look how we're talking right now, right? This idea that, I could attend a virtual conference and get value from it. I think in 2018, people would have said, no, you have to fly in, you have to be in person. Now I think it's just, we do this multiple times every day and we get value from it. And so we also saw that telehealth works. We also saw that Livongo could increase, adherence and, diabetes management outcomes. And so, we've seen all these things, but it all happened because COVID forced it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess, it's the one of the few lasting benefits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned a couple of, really strong digital health startups and companies there that are making changes in the healthcare realm at the moment, like Livongo. Are there any other examples of digital health startups that have recently successfully?
Well, there's a ton. I don't know if people read the Rock Health reports, but I think they talked about Q1 there was like 130 something deals, 2.7 billion went into digital health. A lot of AI companies. What were the big ones? Zephyr, I think, raised over 100 million. Abridge raised 150 million. On the non-AI related one, a good friend of HITLAB, Transparent, did, I don't know, they're probably their Series Z round at this point, but they added another 125 million, I think. DecisionRx got 100 million. And then, there's just tons and tons and tons. I talked about a company that we just invested in April, Middleway Games, which is making a digital prescription DTX video game to help with anger management. And so, there's so many interesting things. Like, who would have thought that, wow, I'm going to play this video game to manage my anger. But, the science backs it up.
No, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. To the point of, obviously, when you do invest in any kind of company, whether it is a digital health organization or otherwise, I'd love to hear from you about some of the other things that you have to think about as an investor, especially when it comes to looking at a solution or a technology that addresses health equity, and also the role that the social determinants of health also plays when you have to think about these different investment strategies and processes that you have to go through as a VC.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Jerry. I think there's two things that we think about, at least the way we do it, is there's really, I guess, a difference between health equity and health disparities. And so, we try to think about it from two different kind of buckets, if you will, that can handle them. But just as an example, that Middleway Games company that's making the anger game, we were intrigued already, but then, they said, our launch market is going to be in the corrections industry with prisoners. And so, that was immediately interesting because, here's a market that's traditionally underserved, but that also has large, health problems. I'm going to call anger a mental health condition or a behavioral health condition. And because of that, there's a very distinct payer opportunity. And so, a lot of times if there is, a solution that's addressing social determinants of health or, race, ethnicity, poverty, access to care, Joanne just talked about that in the last panel or two panels ago, I guess. There's often non-dilutive funding available. There's grants, there's foundations, there's donor advised funds. There's a lot of other funders besides just risk equity investors that might come to the table. This Middleway Games company, has a number of other financial partners that de-risk it for us as the investor because of the decision to go ahead and, launch the game in an area that would, address health equity, let's say?
Again, thank you both for joining today. It's been a phenomenal interview. James, I would have people reach out again. Check out James's LinkedIn in the chat box. And we are nearing the top of the hour and our last hour on the program. And to help us get there is a dynamic duel of digital health. For those of you who are unfamiliar with digital health and the transactional world that happens around mergers, acquisitions, underwriting, and just making sure deals are getting done and papering some of the bigger deals in the digital health industry, you want to know Jim and DLA Piper. Certainly a force to be reckoned with. And then, of course, Ariana McGee is the founder and CEO of Navigate Maternity, and again, another force to be reckoned with as well. She has a track record of success in her career and her background. And on that note, I'm going to hand over the virtual mic to Jim and Ariana.
Thanks, Stan. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to participate again in the program here. I know we only have 10 minutes, so I'll try to be brief and get to the point. Thank you for the nice intro. Our topic is Navigate Maternity, the future of reimbursed FDA cleared medical devices for maternal health, solutions to the crisis and advancing equities. I want to just first say thank you to Ariana for joining us again. And Ariana, maybe just a brief intro for you and your company, and we'll try to dive into some questions here and use our 10 minutes wisely.
Thanks so much, Jim, and thanks so much, Stan, for that very warm welcome. So a little bit about Navigate. We are a tech-enabled medical device company, and we focus on improving outcomes in prenatal and postpartum moms through the use of big data, cleared devices, and a scalable model that really empowers care teams, health systems, and payers to better take care of moms.
And so when we first were on stage together a couple weeks ago now, more than that, I guess, more than a couple weeks, we started with this question. I thought it was an interesting question, and we'll start again. As you began your journey, what was sort of the void that you saw, and why did you think that void was something that needed to be filled and could be filled?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I first learned or identified as a void was it actually happened from my own experience. So, on top of starting the company, I also am a mom of 4. So I have a 6, a 4, a 3, and a 2-year-old. So lots of babies. And it was during my 3rd pregnancy when COVID hit, I was considered to be a high-risk mom, and all of my appointments went virtual. So I was having telehealth visits, but they had no data on me. And that was my first clue that I said, wait, we can do something better here. So, yeah.
And then, as you thought about filling the void, you had principal hurdles, right? What did you see as sort of the big stepping stones or barriers to, I don't want to say entry necessarily, but to reach the conclusion that it was time to move forward with this and that you could?
Yeah, so I think a few of the barriers really kind of lie in revisiting like the core problems within perinatal health. So, number one, we have in our country one of the worst maternal health death rates in the entire world. We actually have the highest prenatal postpartum death rate of any high resource nation globally. And then Black women like myself are dying 3 to 4 times that national average. And this is the stat that always sticks out to me. So I was born in 1990. It was safer for my mother to have me then than it was for me to have my daughter 2 years ago. So per the CDC, at least 84% of the deaths are preventable. So I knew that we were tackling a big problem, right? And those are some pretty big numbers. And you can't solve the entire problem, but you can bite at it. And so one of the things that we identified really through looking at some of the key gaps was, we have a lot of reactive care in our country. So we are only touched about 14 times during a prenatal postpartum journey, and these are snapshots. So then it drives reactive care. And then third, we haven't really been capturing social determinants of health data in a systematic way. And lastly, implicit bias. So we understand that a mother's outcomes oftentimes are due to implicit bias. So how can we help to solve for those key things? And that journey to, at least solving part of that around being proactive and bias came from my own experience when I almost died 2 years ago, giving birth to my last child due to implicit bias, to a physician not listening to me. And those were kind of the hurdles that we identified as being, top of mind, key, urgent. And, I think thus far we've done a fairly good job of helping to solve for at least those 4 issues within this crisis.
And so you've been in the market now for several years. You began your journey several years ago. I'm curious, how has the overall sort of healthcare environment changed along with sort of the economic environment, and how has sort of the situation we find ourselves in now have resulted in you adjusting your approach, if you have?
Yeah, so I think that the environment, has changed quite a bit. We did spend some time on the front end doing a lot of R&D, prior to launching. We actually just launched this past year. And I think prior to, there was a lot of focus on wellness products within the women's health, maternal health space. And trust me, those products are absolutely needed, right? We need to think about the holistic experience of a mom. I think one of the things that, I'm starting to see some shift is that we're identifying that we need also actual clinical devices too. We need things that are going to empower physicians, empower health systems, empower payers to better allocate resources, to give them more insight into their patients. And then lastly, I think the way that we now are learning in order to make this scalable is that it has to be reimbursable. It can't just be that we think of an innovation and it's a really great idea and we're passionate. Your passion has to also be backed up by, can it actually be sustained? And the way that healthcare works in our country currently is that if it's not reimbursable, the likelihood of it being sustainable is fairly low. Coming from my background, I know we talked a little bit about, our backgrounds, but I come from the market access and reimbursement space. I did some sales too, but I worked at large biotech, pharma companies, medical device companies. And bottom line is that if you cannot get it reimbursed, if CMS does not cover it, and so that's coverage coding payment, it can't scale.
And so sort of staying on the topic a little bit of the overall environment, let's shift from healthcare as a broader focus to maternal healthcare. How have you seen that sort of change since you've begun your journey? Are you happy with the direction of it? And I guess from the standpoint of what you're trying to do and are doing, how have you seen sort of those changes specifically focusing on your company and the goals that you have?
Yeah, so, I definitely think that there has been a lot more focus on women's health, right? We've seen it come down from the White House and Joe Biden. We've seen Kamala Harris really kind of move things forward with expanding postpartum Medicaid coverage up to 1 year. Postpartum now live in 45 states. So we've seen this kind of, even like this policy change around women's health. I still think there is an opportunity though for us as an industry to put more dollars within women's maternal health. There just needs to be more research done. But in order to fund the research, you need to have dollars. And the folks at the table, no offense, guys, but oftentimes they don't look like me, right? They're not women, and oftentimes they're not people of color. And so these things aren't top of mind for them. And the more though we can bring, women like myself to the table to allow us to make the decisions about our own health and how to best fund it and how to bring the solutions for it for us, I think the more successful we'll be in the uptake and the sustainability of our products.
And so just staying on that theme for a minute, what are the areas that you're seeing in maternal health specifically that maybe are getting more traction and maybe those that are getting less traction? How do you sort of see the environment unfolding as you speak about maternal health itself?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that we've gotten some early traction with some great wellness products. I think that's starting to shift because we understand that it's difficult to make that scale. I know we've seen some movement within like the fetal monitoring space too, which is great. But I think there's some opportunity though, even more so within the remote patient monitoring space. There's some opportunity to create devices. There's actually a really cool startup called Galena by Ashley Croft. She has a preterm labor device. So, I mean, things like that, I think are things that are really going to move the needle forward in terms of improving the outcomes for moms.
So, Stan, I see you up there in the corner. I have one final question for Ariana, if I can quickly ask it, and then we'll let you move on. You're in the process of looking, at your company and potentially doing some fundraising. Just talk to us a little bit about where you are in the company's lifestyle and where you sort of see it going over the next couple of years here.
Definitely. So we have successfully raised a pre-seed. We're in the middle of our seed round. We have most of it done, committed. We've had our first close. So we are venture backed, which is an amazing milestone as a med tech company, as a Black women led med tech company. So we've hit some milestones, but right now we're really focused on our customers. We've got some early customers down at U of L and Humana. We are, got some other great customers in our pipeline. We're doing a pilot up here in Fort Wayne with Cameron Hospital. So we've got some early customers and some early traction. And now it's really about how we can continue to scale the product and get this in the hands of more moms to improve the outcomes.
Well, Ariana, thanks very much. Stan, thank you to HITLabs as well for the opportunity, and turn it back over to you.
Just incredible work that we're seeing from, I love the background story too, in terms of having someone who's a 4-time mom and Ariana, and just beginning to see the cracks in the system and being able to fill them in. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Good day.
We're trucking right along here, and we have a tremendous expert who's coming online now to talk to us about a little bit more about this digital supply chain stuff that we've talked about earlier in the program today, only because we're seeing so much movement there in terms of the life science industry, the healthcare industry working together, whether it's the hospital systems and the pharmacy systems, or some of the manufacturing companies coming together and accelerating the virtualization and the digitization of their supply chains. And one of the leaders in the area is Dennis Grosclose, who's the president and CEO of Transvoyant, which is really the backbone of what we're seeing in the digitization of the supply chain. And I'll let Dennis give more of a background on what he's doing, but Dennis, maybe kick things off a little bit with what Transvoyant is and how it's transforming supply chain and life sciences.
Well, Stan, with only 10 minutes, I could really ruin the whole program, so I'll be super short.
Sounds good.
Transvoyant's been around for, a little bit over 10 years now. Really laser focused on pharmaceutical, life sciences, nutritional health customers around the globe. Also have some U.S. government customers as well in that area. And really we're focused on global end-to-end flow and decision-making in a new way across end-to-end supply chains, right? So in the old days, you'd buy vertical solutions for your warehouse and for planning and demand forecasting. And we lay on top of that and look at past, present, and future data. We stream our own data at ourselves and make predictions and interdictions and prevent things from happening in the supply chain. At a high level, that's what we do. It can run the gamut from running a huge distributor's distribution network to all the inbound flow and manufacturing into large pharmaceutical manufacturers. So we are blessed and thankful to have customers like Merck and McKesson and Convatec and DSM, which is a big European nutritional health company. And super happy to be here, Stan. Love what you guys are doing at HITLab in Columbia. So anytime I can help, I'll help.
That's fantastic. I
expect you're going to ask me a bunch of questions and I got to try to pretend I know what I'm saying. So do the best I can.
Just do your best. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And the audience is a very diverse audience of healthcare system leaders and digital health funders and digital health startups. So your perspectives and insights on some of the key digital transformation strategies that you're seeing from your position of leadership in the system? And what do you see being implemented in those systems relative to, and within the pharmaceutical supply chain that's really affecting and impacting efficiency and resilience, which is more important than ever?
Having come up in the half of my life in the intelligence world and national security world, half in real supply chains, I'm actually starting to see big pharma and life science customers move to a place on their digital journey where they're looking across not just their, let's call them legacy systems, whether it's manufacturing MES or whether it's a transportation system or a warehouse system. They're trying to connect digitally to all their suppliers and contract manufacturers, all of their logistics service providers, which is kind of how we were born with these customers. And they're taking a holistic view as opposed to kind of let me optimize my warehouse and let me get the most yield out of manufacturing with high quality. They're pulling that data out. They're connecting to all these partners and devices that are proliferating. And then they're making decisions, using the buzzwords of AI and ML. And I'm not a buzzword guy, but that's what's going on. And then pushing those decisions back into the enterprise or the system to prevent and get ahead of problems. So predict a temperature excursion and get ahead of it. Predict when there's a route changing in real time that was planned so that instead it's going near a high theft area, right? Et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of use cases that are enabled once you take that holistic end-to-end approach to data and decision making. I guess the second one is kind of a knock on to that, which is customers are learning that they don't really need to buy these monolithic systems anymore. They can rapidly innovate now. So for the past 8 or 10 years, there's been improvements in technology, improvements in data across the world, where you can rapidly innovate new kind of mini applications really fast. And instead of buying a particular vertical system, let's call it a WMS that has 100 features and you only need 4 of them, right? You can just quickly make those 4 features and keep on going. So it is slow because there's governance and there's Sarbanes-Oxley and there's all kinds of systems that are in place that are systems of record. But it is starting to happen. A decision layer is coming on top of all those data and systems. Those are my 2.
No, that's big. And so when you start looking at partnerships and collaborations that are shaping the future of the pharmaceutical supply chain around the country, what and how are those being shaped? How are you seeing those come together? And what do you think the fruits of those will look like in 5 years, 10 years?
I wish this was non-attribution and nobody could write what I say, but I'll do the best I can, Stan. I'm a little grayer than a lot of folks. We have global customers, so it's quite a bit different globally, right? In the US, we don't see the economic incentives for the big players, right? A manufacturer, a distributor, a paying organization, a provider. The economic incentives aren't quite aligned where there's really good, as a supply chain guy, demand, supply, information sharing. Obviously, price and cost transparency is not great. It's a little bit different in Europe. We do a lot of work there. And I'm not here to advocate a political view or anything. I'm just saying it's different. And we happen to, be on all sides of that through what we do. We can see shortages at a certain distribution center, but that the manufacturer doesn't know about. And today there's no incentive to and we can't, obviously, that's not how we do business, right? So at a high level, there's a lot of economic incentive issues with collaboration. That's the bad news. The good news is at each one of those kind of little ecosystem silos, there's great work going on between a manufacturer, a logistics service provider, some of these new technology companies, not so much legacy stuff, and being able to, and even like sensor and hardware providers, right? Think of, temperature excursions and theft and tamper. That's collaborating well in each of those works. So it's happening in distribution, it's happening in manufacturing. We don't do a ton, at the point of care. So I don't have a good view for you there yet, but we're working on it. So negative is economic incentives are, as you guys all know, a mess. Positive is, and they're starting to happen across the ecosystem. So logistics service providers, think 3PL, 4PL, and technology providers, and a manufacturer or a supplier to a manufacturer, or manufacturer and its contract manufacturer are starting to collaborate really well. Part of that's just enabled with easier technology and data to help digitize those flows and behaviors. So
that's right. Well, this has been fantastic. And again, just Dennis, what you guys are doing, hats off to you. Really, it's important work and it's very solid. And we're excited to be collaborating with you guys and looking forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you for joining us.
You're making me blush, but thank you all.
Virtual round of applause for Dennis and all the good work Transvoyant's doing. Again, look him up. A lot more detail behind his short comments here today, but if you do get his LinkedIn, definitely connect with them. They are really just transforming the digital supply chain in front of your very eyes and working with a lot of the big manufacturers, et cetera. And next up, another person who's in the middle of transforming a lot of the healthcare system digitally is HITLAB's own Riley Fink, one of the innovation strategy editors we have at the lab, to talk with Greg Ryder, who's the director of corporate compliance and the founding member of the DEI Council there. And with that, we'll hand it over to Greg and Riley.
Always great to see you here, and you're becoming a little bit of a familiar face on our HITLAB events, which is excellent. But for those who maybe don't know you, can you start by just giving a brief introduction and talk a little bit about your background?
Sure. Great to be here, Riley. Always a pleasure to be with you and the HITLAB team. So my formal title is Director of Corporate Compliance at Emblem Health, but I also sit on our DEI Council, and I'm a founding member and leader of our LGBTQ Employee Resource Group. So it's sort of an interesting sort of marriage, if you will, of the two items. So compliance helps to inform some of the work that we're doing across through the lens of DEI, and we're really working to show how not just the product that we offer, but just how we can impact our communities, the LGBTQ communities, make sure that we're doing all that we can to improve visibility, to ensure that all those folks are getting the healthcare and wellness benefits, and then just sort of be an advocate for the community at large. And that's why I'm grateful for working with you and HITLAB. Gives me an opportunity to share some of the good news and some of the challenges across the larger LGBTQ space. I'm not particularly an expert specifically in that health. I'm not a provider, but I'm great to sort of help share the news and the message to your broader audience and help people to understand what they can do, what's being done, and to hopefully help others to increase visibility and health equity.
Yes, excellent. And let's unpack that a little bit. So what are some of the key challenges that LGBTQ plus individuals face in accessing healthcare, and how can technology help mitigate some of these issues?
Sure. So I think, like a lot of things, it's certainly within the US, it just sort of depends on where members and patients live. Some areas and pockets are really doing a great job of meeting the needs, and other areas not so much. So I think traditionally, and even still now, discrimination, lack of understanding, and cultural competency is still a big issue. And there was a recent survey that sort of profiled and asked LGBTQ patients, what's your greatest challenge? And the simple answer was being able to select and find either an LGBTQ identified or, aligned provider. And so there are some tools that allow people to do that. GLMA, which is a health professionals association, they have an online database where you can type in your zip code and it will give you a list of providers in your area that are identified as LGBTQ. There's another organization called Violet that's partnering with GLMA to provide online cultural competency training, and providers can get CE and CME credits for that. So those are some simple things. And then just accessing the vast resources available online for webinars, for resources, for toolkits, for tips. It starts with providers and basically all medical center, hospital staff taking the initiative to say, how can I better inform myself about my LGBTQ patients? Simple as marketing and communications. One of the, I know a lot of the hospitals here in New York, Mount Sinai, a lot of their waiting rooms have signs that says LGBTQ Patients Bill of Rights. Something as simple as that. Having photos in the waiting room that don't just show hetero couples, but same-sex couples and their kids. You know, intersectionality. Those are very simple tools that can go a long way to helping LGBTQ patients feel comfortable, feeling welcomed, and that they're being heard, and that their provider and even the medical center staff is listening to them, understands their preferred pronouns, etc. You know, it's a vast sort of continuum, but it starts very simple.
Yeah, those are some excellent, easy steps to take that can, improve just the way that, everybody is received when they're looking for the healthcare that they deserve to get. And let's talk a little bit more about, digital health platforms and how they're tailoring to meet specific needs of LGBTQ plus populations, particularly focusing on mental health and for youth and for underserved populations. Can you unpack that a little bit more as well?
Yes, again, sort of nothing terribly complicated or that you need advanced degrees to understand. But I would say one of the most simplest tools is to access patient portals, ensuring that our patient portals are designed to allow patients within the confines of privacy of their own homes to go in and to update their profile, include what are their preferred names and pronouns. I know in Epic, for instance, and other EMRs, people can put everything from preferred names, they can put a history of their gender affirmation surgeries. There's a section where they can actually list sort of anatomy and body parts. So all that can be done so that when they meet with the provider, they can look at it, and just as they see other things, their demographics, their vital signs, medical history, they can see those things. Have they successfully transitioned? Where are in that process? So I think patient portal is a huge thing. I would say accessing the resources that I've already talked about. And then there's a grassroots organization based out of Hartford called the Health Collective. And they're doing things such as updating their databases, their CMR systems that can capture things such as key identifiers that might come off of a patient portal or EMR. They can also include information about patient scheduling. Patients can go in and schedule it. And then on the other end, they can pull appropriate data, obviously following privacy and HIPAA rules, to pull information for board reporting, for grants and fundraising, demographic aggregate information. So having those robust centralized systems that can pull all that information together. It can be things as simple as ensuring your websites are updated and allow people to easily access and register for events, and they can capture key information. What's your name, your preferred name, your pronouns, how do you identify, are you registering for this event? One of the things that the Health Collective does is they really focus on youth, so they can allow their constituents to register for things such as their healthcare coalition conferences for youth, and ensuring that they're not being more invasive, and that youth feel like they can register what they need to do, that they're not asking for unnecessary information, that they're not going to be sending a report to their parents and say, oh, do you know that your son or daughter, your child has signed up for this LGBTQ event? It's ensuring that there are safeguards in place that allow our already existing systems to be updated to capture information that helps And then another thing that the Health Collective is doing is they're providing their mobile crisis response teams with updated laptops as they go out into the field and are intervening and meeting with folks. That can ensure that they've got the tools that they need to meet people where they are. They can refer them to other providers, to social services. They can do it right there with the patient, with the member, and sign them up for whatever programs are necessary and needed.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it sounds like you're a great advocate for them. So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and have you advocate for HITLAB. So you spoke at our summit in May. You gave a great speech. So for someone who might be on the fence, why should they come to the one that's going to be in December in person in New York City at the Microsoft Tech Center?
Great question. I think because of the personal connections, this was really, I haven't had a chance to share this with you, Riley, but right after my talk at Microsoft Center, I had a woman come up to me. She said, I was looking at I was looking at the agenda, and she said, I saw that you were listed and, as speaking on this topic, and as a lesbian woman of color, I never get to hear or see these topics. So she goes, it was very clear to me that I needed to make sure I would get to your session. So I think for those folks who don't necessarily get to see these topics in some of the spaces, some of the conferences, some of the webinars, I would say yes. And whether I'm there or someone else or additional folks, I think that's important. And then I think just, as you and I have talked about, Riley, this is an important space, and it gelled with all the great things you're doing. The person that spoke to person, ahead of me, there was also I don't know if it's the same person that was at the one earlier this month, but yes, women of color, mothers, maternity needs. There's a huge space, and we need to make sure that we're reaching out and capturing all those segments. And what I love about HITLAB, Riley, is that you've got these great events, but you can put in so many different topics and so many speakers because everybody gets 10 or 15 minutes. So it's like you can pull in a lot more people. You can be way more inclusive and more robust agenda that many more traditional conferences provide. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly enjoy having you on, and I'm sure we'll see you in December, and I'm sure we'll see you before then. But thank you again for your insights. It's always great to chat with you. And speaking of having only 10 minutes, our 10 minutes is up. So I'll send it back over to you, Stan.
Greg, thank you so much for the insights and the perspectives and sharing that story. That was really important to hear, I think, for our audience, and just in terms of the team of people that put these together at the lab, inspirational and certainly motivational for everyone. So thank you. And we have we're just moving quickly here. We are coming to almost the last half hour, and we have a critically important speaker coming up next. And for those of you who don't know this individual, you want to link in with him and you want to get to know him really well, because he's one of about a dozen, maybe almost 24 partners that the lab has with senior leaders within the federal health government that are really helping folks like you, especially if you are a startup or thinking about having a startup, understand the labyrinth that is the federal government funding system. And Joseph Conrad is someone who has been involved in the NIH for many years, and he has a tremendous background in understanding where the funding lies and where it sits and how to access it. So on that note, I want to introduce everyone to, again, Joseph Conrad, and talk a little bit more about his work, certainly at the NIH, and certainly give him a chance to present on the topic of SBIRs and the NIH as your technology development and commercialization partner. And Joseph, handing the virtual stage over to you.
I am a senior technology analysis and marketing specialist with the National Cancer Institute. And my role primarily is to help create awareness for companies that aren't aware that they can actually work with NIH beyond the general thought of just getting funding from the NIH. And so this talk is primarily designed to give you guys insight into what's on the other side of the funding thought process from NIH so that you can actually enhance your collaborative and engagement with the NIH to help yourself or help your companies either grow the company based on our technology, expand pipelines, expand your company's pipelines, or actually collaborate with our investigators to develop your technology or help develop ours. So with that, let me see if we can see my screen now. There's a perception out there that when people are thinking about NIH, they're only looking at NIH as a funding mechanism. And so the perception is that it's only a source of funding. And so those thought processes lead people to file and submit grant proposals and also contribute to our Small Business Innovation Research Program, or our SBIR program. And that's an excellent program. And it is primarily designed to help companies grow their technology with the assistance of NIH, like any other grant program. The perception is that it's only funding, NIH is only a funding source. Your instincts are correct in that thought process, but NIH is actually more than just a direct funding source. When you're thinking about funding with NIH, you're really thinking about the NIH extramural program. So the money that Congress provides the NIH every year, 80% of that budget goes to putting out grants. So the money leaves NIH in the form of grants. And that's what you're thinking about when you think about getting funding from NIH. But NIH is more than just a direct funding source. The other remaining 10% or so, somewhere between 10 and 20% of our budget, goes to the intramural program. And the intramural program funds all of the research that goes on in the labs on NIH's campus. And so what we have on the intramural side for companies is access to NIH developed technology through licensing and collaborations. But we also have, from the collaboration perspective, we are able to co-develop technology with the company, either our technology or the company's technology, provided that there's a synergistic match between the NIH and the technology that the company has. But we provide indirect funding in the sense that NIH will actually spend money on the company's behalf. And a lot of companies are unaware of that. So for example, if there is a clinical trial that the NIH is funding or sponsoring, rather, the company that is collaborating with NIH on that clinical trial would not necessarily get the cost of the clinical trial. So think about how expensive a clinical trial costs. Let's say it's $1 million, all right? So we won't give the company $1 million, but we will spend $1 million on the company's behalf because NIH actually pays for the trial, right? So the thing that the company has to worry about is the company may have to provide the drug, they may have to provide staff to help run the trial, but the overarching cost of the trial is actually spent on NIH's dime, and the company doesn't have to worry about that money coming out of their burn rate when they're moving forward with whatever they're pursuing. So that's one aspect of the intramural side that a lot of companies are unaware of. Another thing is companies have a tendency to go to university technology transfer offices when they're trying to source new technology. So they'll go to Carnegie Mellon, MIT, and some of the other universities that are listed on this slide, which are great universities and they have fantastic technology, right? The thing that they're not thinking about when they do this, though, is that the universities they're going to are actually profit centers. So when you license the technology from a university such as what's listed here, they're going to charge you for exclusivity, right? And they're also going to take some type of equity from your company for the privilege of licensing their technology as well. So you have to think about that when you're licensing technologies from universities. Now, we are a little different in the sense that if you're not looking at NIH as a source of technology, you're really missing out. And the reason you're missing out, for example, is the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, has had 15 product approvals in the last 7 years from licensed technology. Also, we've created or generated over $10 billion in revenue from the royalties that come from our licensed technologies that are co-developed with NIH. We have over 2,000 partnerships and collaborations with companies outside of NIH helping to develop technologies, either NIH's or the companies, right? So this graphic basically shows you where most of the total VC money raised in 2022 came from in terms of technology area, right? So if you look at the top, oncology is the top investment target, and all of the other diseases down the left-hand side of this column are also represented. So you can see that a tremendous amount of money has been invested in patient health, so to speak. But the thing is, a lot of companies don't know that NIH is actively developing technologies in all of these areas, right? And that also includes diagnostics and devices and non-medical devices and the like. So they could be used for any of these specific disease indications. So companies are unaware of that as well, okay? So another thing that companies aren't aware of is that NIH is the largest research institute in the world. We have over 2,800 technologies that are available for licensing and collaborations. And so the nature of the technologies that we have cover medical and non-medical devices, diagnostics, software, apps, digital wearable health, and obviously therapeutics and research materials. And these research materials cover things like antibodies, cell lines, and animal models that companies can use in their research and development to further their own research to get to their own technology or their own therapeutics or devices or things that they're creating on their own. They can use our research materials, our research tools to help facilitate the development of their technology. And they own the device or the underlying technology that's created from using these research tools. And then the other thing is we have favorable business terms. Now, I'm going to go back to the universities for a second. I said that universities are profit centers. So if you're going to license a technology from a university, you're going to pay a premium for exclusivity, and they're going to take equity. If you collaborate with the university, they're going to charge you overhead. So if you put in $3 into a research collaboration with the university, more than likely, $2 of those dollars are going to be used to keep the lights on, pay the staff, and keep the stadium, running smoothly, right? So unlike universities or tech transfer offices, the NIH has more favorable business terms. So our terms are basically based on just getting a fair return on the public dollar that created the technology that you're licensing. So we're not trying to kill you with royalty rates, okay? We also don't take equity in your company. So that's a whole lot less money you have to worry about coming out of your burn rate for the development of your particular technology or just keeping your lights on. And then we do have exclusive licenses. Now, it may be limited by field of use, but exclusivity is available. Our collaborations don't have any overhead. With the exception of NIH, it's capped at 15%. But NCI, National Cancer Institute, has capped there at 15%. So 27 institutes don't have any overhead. So if you license technology from any of the 27 institutes, with the exception of NCI, you won't see any overhead. We also have reasonable milestone payments and royalty rates. Again, we're not going to charge you a premium for exclusivity. So our royalty rates are going to be basically designed to give a fair return on the public dollar that created the technology. Another interesting thing is we won't take your IP. So if you bring IP into a collaboration, that's your background technology. We have our background technology, and we combine the two to make something new. If we create something new, then we jointly own it. But because the NIH can't commercialize technology, we license our ownership rights in that new technology to the company, and the company takes that and commercializes it. Okay? And then you also get a right of first refusal for an exclusive license when you collaborate with us as well. So we're not going to compete with you, right? So situations have occurred where a company has partnered with an organization and the organization has turned around and started a new company and ends up competing with the person that they collaborated with. We don't do that. Okay, so again, we're really trying to help facilitate economic development by helping companies develop and grow with their technologies. And another thing is we have a preference for small business, right? So it's actually part of our mission statement for us to promote small business. So if people are concerned about, well, if I license this technology and say Merck comes in and they want to license it too, how do I compete with Merck? Well, you're not competing with Merck because Merck is huge and you're a small business. And so we have a, as long as you have the ability to, commercialize, develop the technology, get it to patients, commercialize it, et cetera, then you're going to win out over a larger pharma. Okay, that doesn't need it because they're not really contributing to, that development of
this is great
economic development, right? And I think I'm running out of time. If I can run through this real quick. So these are some of the benefits of licensing the technology. Licensing leads to funding. You can see here that several companies have licensed technology and raised funding based on the technology that they've licensed from us. Also, collaborations lead to acquisitions as well. So these companies have collaborated with us, and you can see, for example, Kite is the most recent, where they were bought by Gilead for $11 billion based on the technology that they licensed from us. And then the last slide, I'll go through this very quickly. This is a collaboration example. We partnered with a company that created a wearable sleep device that measures sleep that you would see in a sleep center. It's something they can wear in their personal, and they're at home in person. And we partnered them with the National Institute of Diabetes and Kidney Diseases to do a study. And this study helped save, using this device, helped save the study because the patients were required to go to a sleep center and they didn't want to do it after the first time. And so we partnered this company with the investigator. The devices were given to the patients in the study. They wore them without any problem, and the study went off without a hitch. And these are all the things that we did for the company as well. And then they were able to take that experience with NIH, raise money on it, partner with the Veterans Affairs to help manage the VA and their sleep centers. And they created something called a Somno ring, which essentially is a ring that replaces the band that you see on the top left that patients would wear on their or across their chest. And then they launched their own independent diagnostic testing facility and won a major award from that. So these are all the benefits of working with the intramural program from the NIH. So if you're thinking about looking at just the extramural side with grant funding and the like, you really need to consider working with the intramural side, and feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact information, and we can have a more in-depth conversation from that point. So Stan.
Joe's a brave
Sorry.
man when he puts his email address on his contact information slide so that you all can reach him. So thank you again, Joe.
Please do.
We're looking forward to working with you in the future, and be sure to add HITLAB Summit on your conferences slide at the end. That we want to see you back again on December 2, 3, 4 at the Microsoft Tech Center in Times Square in New York City. We'll talk to you later, Joe. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
And again, don't forget to sign up. For those of you who are going to be able to make it into New York City the week after Thanksgiving, December 2, 3, 4 at the Microsoft Tech Center in Times Square, we would love to see you there, and hopefully see Joe there as well. And a lot of our other federal partners, just an amazing team of folks. We've never seen anything like this in the history of the lab. Last 25 years of just incredible federal partners who are getting out into the ecosystems, presenting and helping startups find the funds they need to get to the next level. Speaking of the next level and federal funding, we have the $3.5 million grant winner from the DoD, Richard Hanbury from Sana, coming up at the end. And before that, we have our own HITLabs, John Hammett, the executive director of the lab, and Riley Fink, one of the innovation strategy managers, here to talk more about what is happening with AI in the healthcare ecosystem. Very happy to hand over the mic to John and Riley. John, Riley.
Thanks for being on and speaking with us, John. I'm going to ask you, as we're a little short on time, let's get your 10-second background. See if you can do it that quickly.
I've got 30 years of scar tissue, bruises, and cynicism from being in healthcare as a senior executive.
All right, perfect. Perfect. Well, we're here to talk a little bit about the impact of AI. So can you share with me some of the evidence that exists for value creation from the use of AI within healthcare?
I will be happy to do that, but I'm going to put it into a context because I think there's an important dimension that we lose sight of when we find ourselves in exciting and turbulent times. And so I'm a big fan of Yogi Berra, who has been reputed to say the future isn't what it used to be. And I've had that bouncing around in my head for a long time. And so it would be an interesting thing to do to look back first and say, over the last 30 years, what's happened in healthcare and what have we learned that creates a canvas or a landscape, if you will, for the current level of enthusiasm and excitement and the explosion of point solutions using AI as a foundation. And so one of the first things we could do is look at what's happened to cost. In the 30 years I've been involved in healthcare, have I made a difference in the various accountabilities that I've had? And in 1990, the U.S. spent $725 billion on healthcare, about 12% of GDP. In 2020, we spent $4.1 trillion, or 20% of GDP. So if you look at costs, in that 30 years, costs have gone up significantly. And we'll come back to cost in a second, because I think that's an underlying set of assumptions about the excitement of AI. If we take that spending and look at it per capita, we spent around $3,000 per person in 1990, and today we're spending something close to $14,000 per person on healthcare in the U.S. And so, again, at the cost level, costs have not behaved nicely. The only thing that has interestingly gone down is that in 1990, out-of-pocket costs represented about 19% of total personal healthcare spending. So, essentially, whatever was spent on my healthcare, 20% of that came out of my pocket. And in 2020, 2021, it was down to about 11%. And so the spending at an individual level has potentially gone down a little bit because of the insurance programs that have been put in place. But that's not a cost of healthcare, that's a cost to the individual. And I'm finally going to close with the ever bad boy or the straw dog that we beat the heck out of, which is prescription drugs. 1990s, we spent 40 billion, and today we're spending 400 billion. And so when you look at costs, you say, well, for all the things we've done in healthcare, costs haven't gone down. Let's optimistically look at has quality improved? And you can see if the costs have at least got us something. In 1990, the average life expectancy at birth was 75. By 2010, it had increased to 79, and as of 2020, 2021, it had gone down to 77 due to COVID. The good news is, however, that an infant mortality in 1990 was 9 deaths per 1,000 live births, and in 2020, 2021, it was down to about 5. So we're certainly having less children die at birth, which is a good thing to do. Readmission rates have not changed a whole lot. They've decreased a little bit. Patient satisfaction has gone up. Preventative care has gone up. Chronic disease management costs have gone up. But the result of the improvement in healthcare has not been significant. So right now we're saying costs are up, quality. So what does that mean for what we're doing with technology? And there is a point to all this, Roddy, and I will answer your question in a moment. But if we say in the 30 years, why have costs gone up and other factors have not improved? You can pretty quickly say technology has driven the cost. We've spent a lot of money on new technologies. We've also created a climate in which overutilization and sometimes unnecessary care take hold. In the US, at least, we've got a fragmented and uncoordinated care system. Drug prices and other forms of technology in healthcare have gone up. Aging population increases demand. But two very important dimensions, I think, are what I'll call cultural and institutionalized aspects of healthcare, which is administrative complexity and inefficiency still reigns in healthcare. Maybe there's some promise for AI. Let's talk about that in a second. But also the lack of price transparency and market competition, which is a cultural characteristic of our healthcare system in the U.S., still interferes with significant improvements. So finally, and here I'm going to look through the lens of another one of my favorite quotes, which is insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result, attributed to Einstein, although there's some question about that. So I say, what have been the big exciting things that we got enthused about many times during the last 30 years? Electronic health records. Where's the evidence that electronic health records have established a new foundation of support? They're more expensive, they're more complex, but have they really brought down costs when costs have been going up? Telemedicine was a promise of significant improvements in access to healthcare and cost of healthcare. There's a lot of it today, but again, we're not necessarily seeing a direct result of that in terms of quality or cost. Mobile health apps, Google Health, blockchain, even IBM Watson were all promises that technology was going to change the nature of healthcare in a significant way. And if we kind of polish the rearview mirror and look at where we've been in the last 30 years, those were also periods of enthusiasm that didn't produce a result. So the cynic in me says essentially, is this one more kind of period of enthusiasm for something that shows promise and creates energy, but may not produce a lasting result in the long run? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll give you a couple of perspectives on AI. First, we've seen they can detect diseases like breast cancer, cervical cancer, and other things as good as, and sometimes slightly better than, the traditional deliverers of medicine, the doctors and the analysts. So interesting. So we've got at least a tool that appears to potentially work, and there's evidence that it works. According to Accenture, AI could also save $150 billion by 2026 in the healthcare system. I haven't figured out where that it's going to come from yet, but at least those claims are being made by people smarter than I am. AI can also help personalize treatment plans, but I'm remembering that 10 years ago, we were all excited about personalized and precision medicine. And if we look around today, we've got DNA analyses, and we've got other aspects of personalized medicine and precision medicine that are not yet getting a lot of traction and producing a lot of promise. AI has predictive analytics and risk stratification capabilities that are being shown in point solutions. Maybe that'll have some additional traction. But also in the area of the unmanaged cost, or the difficult to manage cost of administrative capability, there's evidence that AI-powered chatbots and personal assistants may actually get some traction in that healthcare space. Now, those are all speculative because we've got examples of success, but we don't have what I call ubiquity in those examples yet. And so they still have got to be proven and inserted. So I think there's certainly promise with AI, and I hope that AI does not deliver some of the same frustrations that the past solutions did, but that's still to be seen. So,
yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. But I encourage everyone to reach out and connect with John, and we'll get you back on, I'm sure, in the future, and maybe we can see some of these predictions or premonitions or thoughts that you're putting out there come to some success. So thank you for taking us on that journey. It was really well worth hearing you give us your perspective.
Take care.
Executive Director from HITLAB and former global CIO at J&J and UTC, Burger King, Pillsbury, and someone who began running the lab in 2018 and has tremendous experience in this area. If you're more interested in talking to John or Riley, again, please connect with them directly on LinkedIn, and they'll be more than happy to follow up with you. Next up is Richard Hanbury, our last presenter of the day, coming off of an enormous announcement last week of a nice size funding round from the DoD. We're talking about federal health innovation and federal health funding just a few moments ago with Joseph Conrad. Well, here is reality speaking as someone who's recently won a big grant from the DoD for a revolutionary device that's been HITLAB tested and verified. And we did a study on sauna going back to 2019 and found that it was extraordinary in helping get people to REM sleep faster than a sham device. So, Richard, coming on this big news, and I know it's the end of the day, the end of the session, but appreciate your time today. For people that don't know who sauna and what sauna is, they certainly should, since most of them are digital health advocates and scientists and startups and whatnot. Give people a 1-minute thumbnail on what sauna is.
Certainly, and thank you, Sam. Really appreciate being here, and thank you for bringing me on at the end of the day. Very glad to be a note of optimism at the end. This is the sauna device. It is an audio-visual neuromodulation. So someone turns on pulses light at the eyes, sound into the ears, and generates changes in the brain akin to transcranial magnetic stimulation. I would say better than most of the electrical ways of stimulating the brain. In the audiovisual realm, we also have people like Cognito Therapeutics as well. So we're a new area that's coming along.
That's fantastic. And again, I hope you just met Joseph Conrad from the NIH and just talking about all the funding opportunities that they offer. But if you could tell everyone about the announcement that just came out on your site last week about the DoD funding.
Yes, thank you. So the DoD, so CDMRP, so congressional related funds on things related to mental health, largely go through the DoD. And in our case, it's military operational medicine. And for us, it is PTSD, adjustment disorder, and pain and sleep in medical personnel. But the PTSD was the big one from last week, where the DoD funded the pilot study that was run at the VA at the Medical University of South Carolina. That pilot study produced really good data that showed us better than any existing drug in the category, and alongside other standards of care. And now they're funding the pivotal trial to the tune of $3.4 million. The largest problem in one of the largest bottlenecks in healthcare overall is the lack of mental health providers for the mental health problems that are currently existing. Take Israel as a particular microcosm right now. They have almost 1 in 4 people with PTSD, and they have 1 mental health practitioner for every 10,000 members of the population. The US is roughly the same ratio on mental health practitioners to available population. But obviously you can see how those numbers don't add up, and therefore technology has to fill in the difference. And where we're the difference is ideally, so basically what happens with nearly all 90+% of all psychiatric drugs get delivered at primary care. So you go into your prime physician, you say you have a problem, they give you a drug. Those drugs aren't working well. So we need technology solutions that can be delivered at primary care for both things like PTSD and anxiety, depression, the entire area. And so technology, if it's going to make a really big impact in the mental health space, really has to work out how do we work with primary physicians. And that is what the DoD money is for us. It is, can a primary physician send this device out to someone, take them off a wait list, and improve outcomes, either so they come off the wait list, or so that when they get to specialty care, they're in better shape. So yes, that 3.4 now is to do the pivotal study based on the pilot data that we've just delivered to them.
That's absolutely fantastic. Congratulations on that, Richard. And again, we are running short on time. We've got about a minute left. If you could tell people a little bit more about your experiences within the study realm and really some of the what you would recommend to a lot of the startups who are listening here today on what they should do when considering doing a study to show that they've got the evidence needed for either customer partnerships or venture capital partnerships.
Certainly, I would happily do an hour on this topic because I love it. But first of all, pick the right partner. You guys at HITLAB did an amazing job for us in a very short time frame for data for NATO. Also work out what your ladder of credibility is. What is the easiest, cheapest, quickest next step up the credibility ladder you can do? Don't shoot straight from the RCT. But when you've started going up the ladder, then work from the other way around. Okay, what data do we need to get reimbursement? What data do we need to get from the FDA? And then work backwards from that to where you are. So understand your entire ladder from where you are to market, and then go up that ladder in the smallest, quickest, cheapest, fastest steps that you can, because everyone wants to see those incremental steps. So understand your ladder and then start from the bottom and go step by step really quickly.
That is fantastic. And again, I would really recommend that people get in touch with Richard on LinkedIn. He is one of, if not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to actually being able to gather evidence, gather funding, and keep his company moving on a nice 45-degree angle. 90-degree angle might kill you. So anyway, if you could, again, Richard, keep in touch with us. We're looking forward to having you back on and hopefully seeing you in December at the Digital Health Evidence Summit in Times Square. Until then, take good care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Keep an eye out. So you'll see our email coming out, and don't forget to subscribe to the and register for the Digital Health Symposium in June. Beyond Barriers, we'll be talking about crafting digital health pathways for men's health and talking about that for a bit. And then obviously we would love to give thanks to our amazing team at the lab, all the phenomenal people. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes an army to put these events on. So Rachel, Yamina, Ansley, Raymond, Pallavi, Melissa, Jerry, Naomi, thank you so much for everything that you've done to get this together and everything else. And obviously none of this would be happening without our sponsors, from the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund to Helix VM, Metadata, FFF Enterprises, Information Media Corporation, CanView, and the HTech Collaborative from AARP, some of the biggest and best in healthcare around the world. We appreciate them so much. And again, if there's anyone here that would like to be connected, definitely just reach out to us either on LinkedIn or directly on email. And again, we are spot on 2 p.m. and we are looking forward to seeing you all again in June. Until then, stay safe and have a great rest of your spring. Take care.